Chapter 2998. 5 days later, Ji Xinyue's external injuries had basically healed, and her skills had recovered a little. After all, she couldn't stay calm and wanted to go back. Rongyu Yishinlen knew that she was anxious. In addition, there were frequent strong winds and huge waves in this damned place. Icebergs were destroyed one after another, and the moon god's sword dug one hole after another. It was very troublesome. Therefore, after he recovered about 2/3 of his skills, he simply brought her back to the central plains: blue sky, white clouds, a bright sun, and a cool breeze. Ji Xinyue didn't know how many times she had flown on clouds in her life, but this was the first time she was standing on a cloud controlled by someone else. The cloud wasn't big, only about the size of a small boat. Standing at the top of the cloud was Rongyu Yishinlen. Ji Xinyue stood behind him, watching the surrounding clouds fly past them. There was a sense of contentment, but also a sense of unreality. Her skills had only recovered about 1/10, and she could barely ride a cloud. Rongyu Yishinlen didn't want her to waste the little bit of telekinesis that she had painstakingly cultivated, so he carried her without any explanation. The cold wind whistled outside, and the wind cut like knives. However, the cloud was peaceful, and the wind was not cold. It blew until Ji Xinyue's heart seemed to soften, and she temporarily forgot about Xie Zhu's troublesome matter. Rongyu Yishinlen's back was facing her, and his figure was tall and straight. Ji Xinyue suddenly had an impulse to hug his waist. Fortunately, she suppressed this impulse in time and raised her hand to knock between her eyebrows. "What's wrong with me these few days?" Rongyu Yishinlen seemed to have noticed her actions and asked, "What's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" How was she not feeling well? She was extremely comfortable. Ji Xinyue shook her head decisively. "No, I'm fine." By the way, Supreme Immortal Rongyu, the cloud under her suddenly shook. Ji Xinyue's body leaned and almost fell on him. She quickly steadied herself. "What's wrong?" Rongyu Yishinlen finally turned around and looked at her with a faint smile. "What did you call me?" Ji Xinyue herself was also quite puzzled. Normally, when she was familiar with people, she would call them by their nickname or directly call them by their last 2 words. For example, Rongyu, Tianheng, when she was in a good mood, she would also call him Tianheng. However, even though he was already so familiar with Rongyu Tianlan, she still didn't call him Tianlan. If she wasn't calling him Supreme Deity Rongyu, she would call him Her Highness Rongyu. Occasionally, when she was angry, she would call him by his full name. Rongyu Tianlan didn't mind at first. He felt that after getting along with her for a long time, she would get rid of this bad habit and call him by his name. Although he was no longer her fiancé, they had been through thick and thin together so many times. He was also pursuing her again, so their relationship should be very close, right? At the very least, it was closer than Rongyu Tianheng and the others, right? But she refused to change. It seemed that calling him by those distant names had become a habit. At this moment, Rongyu Tianlan was looking at her. Her eyelashes were slightly curved as if she was teasing her. However, there seemed to be a dark river surging in the depths of her eyes, surging silently. Ji Xinyue's heart skipped a beat when he looked at her like this. She pretended to be confused. "Supreme Deity Rongyu, you are the only Supreme Deity in the Fanine continent." Just as she said this, the cloud under her suddenly paused. Ji Xinyue was caught off guard. Her body was thrown forward by inertia and landed on his back. Her hand subconsciously hugged his waist tightly. Although Rongyu Tianlan had been healing her these past few days, it was only palm-to-palm contact. There was no physical contact. Chapter 2999. Now that she was hugging his thin and warm waist, her mind went blank and she quickly let go. After she steadied herself, she said angrily, what are you doing? She shouted these words fiercely, but just as she finished shouting, her waist was hooked and she fell back into the other party's warm embrace. Before she could completely react, her little mouth was covered by someone's lips. Using his lips, her mind went blank again and her blood rushed to the top of her head. Her heart seemed to be going on strike and skipped more than 1 or 2 beats. His lips were warm. When he kissed her lips, he was gentle and strong. Her mind went blank and she almost forgot to react. He took advantage of the situation and kissed her thoroughly. His lips and tongue swept through her mouth. Their breaths intertwined and even the air around them seemed to heat up. He held her body tighter and tighter, and his body became hotter and hotter. Ji Xinyu finally reacted when she felt something pressing against her lower abdomen. What was she doing? She was actually being kissed by him. She instinctively pushed him away. She used a little too much strength, and this slap almost pushed him down from the clouds. The cloud under her feet also swayed as if it could not bear the weight. Fortunately, the two of them finally separated. Ji Xinyu's heart was beating like a drum. She glared at him and said, You. Lecher. He actually kissed her on the cloud without any warning. Rongyu Ishanlen took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He smiled and said something that deserved a beating, just call me by my name in the future. If you call me God or Your Highness again, I'll punish you with this. Ji Xinyu was speechless. She gritted her teeth and threatened him, if you dare to do this again, I'll kick you away. Rongyu Ishanlen smiled, well, if you have the ability, feel free to kick me. He did not intend to let her go. Come, call me by my name. Ji Xinyu snorted and turned around. She would call him just because he asked her to. How immoral. Rongyu Ishanlen's eyes flashed. The cloud under her feet suddenly sped up and slowed down. Ji Xinyu's body swayed and she fell forward. Rongyu Ishanlen hooked her with his arm and pulled her into his arms. He looked into her eyes and said, Be good, call me once. This guy was addicted to playing with her. Ji Xinyu was so angry that she raised her foot and stepped on him. I won't scream. She used a lot of strength to step on him, but because both of them were stepping on soft clouds, this foot could not really step on solid ground at all. Rongyu Ishanlen held her in his arms and looked at her blushing face and her round and bright eyes. What to do? He wanted to kiss her again. Ji Xinyu knew what he was going to do when she saw his expression. She was afraid that he would admit defeat without warning and kiss her again. She called out to him, Rongyu Tianlan, that's enough. Her palm was still pressing on his lips. Her palms were actually quite delicate, but because she was too hardworking in martial arts and wielded a broadsword, there were some calluses on her palms. At this moment, those calluses were in the middle of his lips, rubbing against his lips. Rongyu Tianlan's eyes darkened, and she took the opportunity to kiss her palm. That ticklish feeling directly numbed her heart. Ji Xinyu did not withdraw her hand, but Rongyu Tianlan had already said calmly, Don't call me by my full name, it's too distant. He smiled again, Do you still want me to kiss you? So you're deliberately not screaming. Chapter 3000. Ji Xinyu was about to be defeated by his shamelessness and could only give in. Tianlan, this should be enough, right? Rongyu Ishanlen sighed. You're so unwilling, it hurts me. He still had no intention of letting her go. Ji Xinyu wanted to kick him away. What else do you want? Rongyu Ishanlen smiled. You should be able to kiss me. Ji Xinyu did not hold back this time. She had been imprisoned in Rongyu Tianlan's arms all this time. He was strong, and she had not recovered her strength yet. Naturally, she could not break free with brute force. Her eyes flashed, and she suddenly raised her leg to block. This was a woman's self-defense technique. Her movements were as fast as lightning. Even if she could not really hit him, it was enough to make him let go. Bang! She hit the bullseye. Rongyu Ishinlen finally let go. Not only did he let go, but he also trembled and fell from the clouds. Ji Xinyu was stunned. By the time she reacted, he had already rolled down. She wouldn't knock him out, would she? He would die if he fell from such a high place. Almost without thinking, she jumped down as well. She used her telekinesis to fall faster than him. She quickly caught up with him and subconsciously pulled him. But with her current strength, how could she pull him down? The two of them rolled down together. Fortunately, the two of them were not ordinary people. Ji Xinyu tried her best to adjust her body while rolling. Together with her telekinesis, she finally reduced the impact of the fall. Seeing the dark ground coming towards them, Ji Xinyu hugged him and turned around in the air so that her back was facing down. Then, she closed her eyes and prepared to fall hard. Naturally, she was also prepared to be his meat cushion. Rongyu Ishinlen, who was in her arms, suddenly moved, and the two of them switched positions in an instant. Pfft, the two of them fell into a pit, and mud flew up, in a mountain forest, beside a stream. Rongyu Ishinlen sat there, his face pale, and his forehead was covered in layers of cold sweat. His blue robe was stained with mud, and at this moment, it was almost like a robe. Ji Xinyu stood helplessly beside him. After all, he was the one who acted as a meat cushion in the end, so Ji Xinyu didn't fall much and could still stand there perfectly fine. She looked at the cold sweat rolling down his forehead. She did not expect that her head would have such serious consequences. She felt very guilty. Are you okay? She actually didn't think that she would be able to hit him. After all, this person's kung fu was extremely high, and his reaction was extraordinarily fast. Who would have thought that he would be hit? Even more so, he didn't think that it would cause such serious consequences. Rong Yuetian closed her eyes slightly and replied with 2 words, "I'm fine." She adjusted her breathing and meditated. Ji Xinyu couldn't help but speak up. Rong Yuetian, you and I are no longer engaged, you shouldn't keep touching me. Rong Yuetian didn't open her eyes, but she still answered her with a few words, "I won't do it again." Ji Xinyu, she paused for a moment and then said dryly, "That's good. You rest and recover first. I'll guard you." Rong Yuetian didn't say anything this time, and directly entered a state of adjustment. Although there were many wild beasts in this mountain forest, there weren't any large beasts. At most, there was a wild dog. Without waiting for Ji Xinyu to make a move, the moon god's sword only flashed its blade for a moment, and the wild dog disappeared without a trace. Chapter 3001. Therefore, Ji Xinyu had an easy time as a guard. Rong Yuetian meditated for a long time this time, an entire day. When he opened his eyes again, it was already noon of the second day. When he opened his eyes, he smelled the aroma of meat. He turned to look. Ji Xinyu had already roasted a wild goat not far away and was waiting for him. When she saw him open his eyes, she waved at him, "Are you hungry? I roasted a goat, try it and see how it tastes." Rong Yuetian walked over slowly, and Ji Xinyu handed him a goat leg. The skin of the goat leg was roasted to a golden brown, and it was still fragrant with oil. It must have taken her some effort. Rong Yuetian did not take the goat leg. He shook his head, "I'm not hungry, you can eat it yourself." He strode forward along the stream. Ji Xinyue's hand, which was holding the goat leg, froze in midair. After a while, she retracted her hand. Seeing that his figure was about to turn the corner, she could not help but ask, "Where are you going?" "To take a bath." Rongyue Tianlong answered with 3 words, and his figure disappeared. Ji Xinyue sat down. She knew that there was a pool at the end of the stream, and it was a good place to take a bath. When he landed, he was covered in dirt, so he should take a bath. However, he had the cleansing spell, so why didn't he use it? Perhaps he was afraid of wasting his telekinesis. Ji Xinyue gnawed on the goat leg by herself. She originally thought that the goat leg she roasted this time was the pinnacle of her culinary skills, and it was extremely delicious, but now she felt a little sick of it. The more she ate, the harder it was to swallow. He's angry, isn't he? Yushin's sword began to whisper in her mind. Ji Xinyue stood up and stopped eating, ignoring the 8-trigram sword. I heard that place is a man's lifeblood, and it can kill him. Yushin's sword continued to gossip about men. Only ordinary men would be like that, right? He was a supreme immortal. Shouldn't he have an indestructible body, and not be afraid of being cut and chopped anywhere? Moreover, she only used her knee to hit him. Although she thought so, Ji Xinyue still felt a little nervous. She couldn't have really hurt him, right? According to what she heard from her friends in the martial world, if a man was hit in that place, he might not be able to do it. Ji Xinyue's heart was also filled with anger, but at the same time, she couldn't get rid of the guilt she felt. She almost wanted to jump up and run to the side of the pond to take a look. Fortunately, she braked in time and stopped after taking 2 steps. Why would she go there now? To watch him bathe. Rongyue Tianlong's bath was a little long and she still hadn't returned after half a day. Ji Xinyue was a little uneasy. Would he drown in the pool because of his injuries? She steeled her heart and was about to run over to take a look when Rongyue Tianlong finally came out from that side. Ji Xinyue heaved a sigh of relief and sat down again. She looked at him and saw that not only had he taken a bath, he had also washed his clothes. His blue robe had returned to its usual dry and clean state. His face was still slightly pale, and there was even a faint trace of weariness between his brows. However, as his clothes fluttered as he walked, there was still a kind of clear and neat ink landscape. Why did you take so long? Ji Xinyue couldn't help but ask. Rongyue Tianlong paused for a moment, her expression was slightly indifferent. It's too dirty, so I washed it for a while longer. It was rare for him to be so dirty. Before he took a shower, there was a layer of dirt on his hair. Ji Xinyue nodded. I see. A breeze blew between the 2 of them, one sitting and one standing. Neither of them spoke for a while. Chapter 3002. Ji Xinyue even felt a little awkward. At the same time, there was an indescribable feeling in her heart. When he was aggressive and passionate towards her, she couldn't wait to kick him far away, but when he was really cold and polite to her, she felt uncomfortable and even vaguely felt wronged in her heart. Even she herself didn't know where this grievance came from. Her heart felt as if it was wrapped by a string, and there was an indescribable sourness in it. It was Rongyue Tianlong who broke the awkwardness. He looked at her and said, "Aren't you going to wash up?" Ji Xinyue was very busy just now. She was protecting him and roasting the lamb. Even after washing her hands and face by the stream, there was still a lot of dirt on her body. Now that she was reminded by Rongyue Tianlong, she instantly felt uncomfortable. She wanted to use a cleansing spell, but her power had not recovered to that extent yet. However, she felt pressured to bathe in the wilderness. Although this place was in the wilderness, it was not a particularly uninhabited place. When she was roasting the lamb just now, Ji Xinyue even saw a hunter passing by in the distance. Rongyue Tianlong seemed to see her apprehension and said, "It's okay. Don't worry and go wash up. I'll protect you." Seeing that Ji Xinyue had no intention of moving, he raised the corner of his lips and said with a faint smile, "Are you afraid that I'll peek?" Don't worry, I won't do such a tasteless thing. Ji Xinyue went to bathe in the end. She also thought it through. Her body had already been seen and touched by Rongyue Tianlan. Why should she be shy about this matter now? Besides, with his character, he probably wouldn't peek. Even if he wanted to look, he would most likely look at them with a smile on his face, and not hide in some corner to peek at them vulgarly. The water in the pool was cold. Ji Xinyue soaked in it and quickly washed up. After all, she was in the wilderness. She didn't dare to strip completely. She still had her underwear on. She was afraid that Rongyue Tianlan would appear from somewhere and watch her bathe with his arms crossed with a smile, so she soaked everything below her neck in the water. However, she was obviously thinking too much. Rongyue Tianlan actually acted like a gentleman. He sat on a rock not far from the pool. From this position, he could hear everything around him. However, because of the big rock, he couldn't see the spring scene in the pool. He sat there and meditated with his eyes closed. He had no intention of sneaking a peek. The moon god's sword circled around him. Are you all right? Seeing that Rongyue Tianlan didn't speak, it asked with concern, you wouldn't have been crippled by that, right? The blue veins on Rongyue Ishanlan's forehead jumped. She clenched her fingers and looked at it coldly. Do you want to be crippled? The moon god's sword trembled and did not plan to speak with him anymore. It turned the sword tip and wanted to fly away. However, the sword hilt was held by someone else. Rongyue Ishanlan's voice was cold, you're not allowed to go. Moon god's sword was not convinced, she is my master, I should be by her side protecting her. Rongyue Ishanlan immediately pulled it back. No. Moon god's sword was extremely puzzled, why? She's taking a bath. Why are you butting in? It can't be, right? Even it was not allowed to see its master. I'm just a sword. Furthermore, it's a female sword. Moon god's sword almost stomped her feet. But you have the heart of a man. Rongyue Ishanlan did not let go of it. You want to be an open and aboveboard sword. Why are you being so wretched? Moon god's sword, when was it not open and aboveboard? Chapter 3003. When they set off again, it was already the morning of the next day. After 2 days of rest, Ji Xinyue was able to ride a cloud again. In order to avoid repeating the same mistake, she suggested that the two of them ride separately. However, Rongyue Tianlan directly lifted her onto her own cloud. When she flew into the sky, she even gave her a reassuring pill. Don't worry, without your consent, I won't do anything to you again. He recovered faster than her, and his skills were originally higher than hers. Ji Xinyue didn't want to argue with him on the cloud, so she agreed. Rongyue Tianlan was a man of his word. He didn't touch her again along the way, not even the slightest bit of physical contact. Even when he gave her the medicine she was supposed to take, he didn't hand it over, but threw it over. Seeing him suddenly become serious, Ji Xinyue breathed a sigh of relief, but the strange feeling of being wronged surfaced in her heart again. She had never really loved someone in her life, so she didn't know what it was like to love someone. Now, this indescribable feeling made her feel a little lost and anxious. She was like a little tiger that fell into a kaleidoscope. She was a little dazzled and scared, but she had to stretch out her little paws and pretend to be strong. It seemed that Rongyue Tianlan had completely recovered after a day and night of rest. His cloud ride was fast and steady. He kept facing forward, and if there was nothing, he wouldn't talk to Ji Xinyue anymore. He was very serious. Ji Xinyue simply sat on his cloud and meditated. She didn't notice the passage of time while meditating. When she opened her eyes, she found that there was a sea in front of her, and there were waves surging on the surface of the sea. Ji Xinyue was surprised and stood up. Where is this? Didn't she ask him to send her back to the Ziyun sect? She remembered that the way back to the Ziyun sect wouldn't pass by any sea. Why were they at the seaside now? She looked at the sky. The sunset was full, and the sun was hanging on the horizon like a half-melted egg yolk. She still had a sense of time. She knew that she should have meditated for about a day. According to Rongyue Tianlan's speed, they should be reaching the Ziyun sect by now. Where I'm staying temporarily, Rongyue Tianlan replied. Ji Xinyue's eyes widened. What are we doing here? Didn't we agree to go to the Ziyun sect? Right now, she was most concerned about her sect. She was afraid that a disaster would befall her sect. Rongyue Tian looked at her and said, let me ask you, if your Ziyun sect is really in trouble, can you stop it with your current kung fu? Ji Xinyue was speechless. She had only recovered a fifth of her power, so she could at most beat Xie Fenglu. But if he really turned into a devil, it would be hard to say. What's more, there was also Huang Qinglu, whose strength she didn't know. She took a deep breath. I might not be able to defeat him, but I can warn Master and Senior Martial Brothers. If you just want to remind me, you can use the sound transmission talisman. Rongyu Ishanlin cut her off, and a sound-transmitting talisman appeared in her palm. Do you want to tell your master the truth now? Ji Xinyu. Her pretty face turned slightly pale. Master hated the people of the Devil sect to the core. Once he knew that Little Nine might be the reincarnation of the Devil sect's devil ancestor, he would probably clean up the sect immediately. He didn't even give Little Nine a chance to defend himself. What if Little Nine wasn't that devil ancestor? Wouldn't they have sacrificed themselves for nothing? Rongyu Ishanlin looked at her for a moment, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. She said faintly, you still can't bear it, right? In that case, what's the use of you going back? Chapter 3004. Anger surged in Ji Xinyue's heart. At least I can see some clues. I'll make a decision after seeing them clearly. She always felt that it would be better if she stayed in Ziyun sect. Wasn't this the reason why she was in a hurry to come back before her injuries had healed? Rongyu Ishanlin said, if Xie Fenglu really does harm to your sect after awakening, you won't be able to stop him with your current ability. What you should do now is to quickly recover all your telekinesis. Only with true strength can you play a more important role, right? Ji Xinyue took a deep breath. I also want to quickly recover my telekinesis, but this can't be done overnight. If you want to recover quickly, go to my residence. My place has the most abundant spiritual energy and a complete set of medicine. It's very beneficial for your quick recovery. At this point, Ji Xinyue couldn't refute. After a pause, she asked, how long will it take to recover in your residence? Rongyu Ishanlin had already begun to draw a spell in the air with both hands. She replied, it depends on your comprehension and ability. Ji Xinyue was speechless. It was just recovering one's power. What did it have to do with comprehension and ability? Was this girl tricking her? Just as she finished thinking, a huge whirlpool suddenly appeared in front of her. Ji Xinyue was already somewhat sensitive to whirlpools. She subconsciously wanted to retreat, but Rongyu Ishanlin grabbed her and jumped directly into the whirlpool with her. Don't be afraid, this whirlpool won't harm you. These were the words Rongyu Ishanlin said when she hugged her in the whirlpool. A silver-white beach, tall tropical coconut trees. A bluestone staircase wound upwards, leading straight into the depths of the forest. Under the shade of the green trees, there were pavilions and towers embellished with white cranes flying in the air. It was a peaceful and auspicious scene. A cool breeze blew gently, warming one's body. Ji Xinyue looked at everything in front of her in a daze. This place was too otherworldly. She didn't expect him to have such a nest. After getting out of the whirlpool, the two of them landed on the ground. Rong Yuishenlen let go of her and looked at her with a smile. How do you feel about this place? Ji Xinyue nodded. It's your style. This place was fresh and elegant. The scenery changed with every step, and every blade of grass, every tree, every mountain, and every rock was ingenious. Even before entering the interior, it gave one an extremely comfortable feeling. She looked at the pavilions in the distance. Some were small, some were elegant, and some were majestic. Every single one of them had its own style, but when these styles were put together, they gave off an extremely harmonious feeling. Someone who was not ambitious would never be able to create such a scene. She thought of the place where she lived in seclusion and built a few thatched huts. They were both living in seclusion, but why was there such a huge difference? It was said that girls liked to tidy up the little nest they lived in beautifully. It was so warm that men couldn't bear to leave. However, she seemed to be the opposite of him. She had always been carefree in this aspect. Her requirements for the nest were that it could be lived in and that it would not be disturbed. On the other hand, he strived for perfection. He had only returned to this continent for a few months, but the place he had built in a hurry was already so stylish. In fact, this place was discovered and set up by Rong Yuetian more than 3,000 years ago. After he left this continent, he also opened up a similar place in the Tianxi continent. Of course, after many years of operation and occasional pointers from Shinjiuli, that place was much more exquisite and perfect than this one. After he returned here, he renovated it again. Chapter 3005. Of course, nothing was exactly the same in this world, and Rong Yue Tianlan didn't want to completely replicate the previous one, so he arranged it according to local conditions. The living environment of this continent was actually better than that of the Tianxi continent, and the spiritual force was also more abundant. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many cultivators here. And this place was the spirit eye of the Fanine continent, so the spiritual force was extraordinarily abundant. Even the wind that blew past his face had spiritual energy surging in it. Ji Xinyue also quickly realized this. It seemed that Rong Yue Tianlan didn't lie to her. This place was very beneficial for recovering from injuries. She sensed the characteristics of the spiritual force, and the fragrance of the plants was mostly wood spiritual force. She cultivated fire spiritual force, and wood spiritual force nurtured fire, so her cultivation would be stronger. Then she would recover even faster. She could achieve twice the result with half the effort. She breathed a sigh of relief. Originally, with her injuries, she would need to meditate for a month to fully recover, but if she cultivated here, the time would be halved. Do you like it here? A voice sounded. Ji Xinyue looked up and saw Rong Yue Tianlan leaning against a coconut tree, looking at her with a smile. Ji Xinyue nodded, "It's very beautiful." She answered like a tourist who came here to play. After praising his island, Ji Xinyue went straight to the point. There should be a spirit eye here, right? I wonder where it is. Can I use it? If she cultivated in the spirit core, her healing speed would be even faster. She couldn't wait to fully recover and return to the Ziyun sect. Rong Yue Tianlan's eyes dimmed slightly. Follow me. He turned around and strode forward. Ji Xinyue followed behind, and for some reason, she felt that Rong Yue Tianlan's back had a bleak and distant feeling. Her heart tightened, and she wanted to hurry up and walk with him, but after thinking about it, she decided against it. It was a green treehouse. The furnishings in the treehouse were extremely simple, and there were only 2 futons. However, the spiritual force in the treehouse was so dense that it almost dyed the air green. Taking a breath, the fresh smell almost seeped into the limbs and bones. This was the spring of the spiritual force of the entire island. After Ji Xinyue came in with Rong Yue Tianlan, she didn't want to leave. She knew that Romue Tianlan had brought her to this place to let her use it. Gratitude grew in her heart and she couldn't help but say, "Thank you." Halfway through her words, she suddenly remembered the punishment when Romue Tianlan said thank you to her. She quickly stopped talking. Romue Tianlan did not give her any punishment this time. He just nodded and told her some things to take note of when meditating here. After a few more words of advice, he left. Ji Xinyu opened her mouth slightly. She looked at the two praying mats, then looked at his departing figure. She wanted to invite him to meditate with her, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. She knew that he had not fully recovered, and this place was a sacred place for healing. There were also two praying mats, so the two of them could actually recover together here. Did he have another place to heal, or was he trying to avoid suspicion? Ji Xinyu felt that she was a little crazy. When he shamelessly approached her, she just wanted to push him away. Now that they were really in a relationship like friends, she felt a sense of loss. She raised her hand and knocked on her own head. What was wrong with her? Could it be that after being injured once, her emotions had also become abnormal? She was worried about personal gains and losses, and her emotions were changing so much that even she herself found it unbelievable. Chapter 3006. She didn't want to think about it anymore. She contacted her eldest senior brother first and was relieved to know that the Ziyun sect was still peaceful. Before Rong Yuetian left, he left her a few pills and told her to take one a day. He said that it would be very helpful for her cultivation here. He was very considerate of her. This person was extraordinarily meticulous in his work. Ji Xinyu suppressed all the irrelevant emotions in her heart. After taking a pill, she sat on the futon and began to meditate. She meditated for 3 days. When she woke up, she felt refreshed. The telekinesis in her body seemed to have recovered quite a bit and was already flowing very vigorously. The wounds on her body were also disappearing. She had personally checked it. The wound that was originally more than 10 centimeters wide had shrunk by half. The remaining half was also faint and had a healthy pink color. True recovery was just around the corner. Rong Yuetian probably didn't come to see her these 3 days because everything in this small treehouse was still in its original position. There were no traces of him being here. It seemed that he should be meditating somewhere to recover. Ji Xinyu suddenly wanted to see him. After all, he gave her such a good place to recover and gave her such a good pill. It was reasonable for her to thank him and even apologize to him. After all, she almost destroyed him. She shouldn't have used so much strength at that time. I wonder if he's alright. Ji Xinyu had always wanted to ask him how he was and if there was anything wrong with him. But first, she felt a little wronged. Second, she felt that this was not a good question to ask. She couldn't possibly ask if her younger brother was alright, right? In the end, it was delayed, but there was still guilt in his heart. Perhaps he was indeed unable to control himself when he kept touching her. Her reaction was a little overboard. She should have rejected him in a gentler way. Even if she wanted to push him, she should have used less strength. The more Ji Xinyu thought about it, the more she couldn't sit still. She jumped up and ran out of the door. This island wasn't big. It was easy to wander around, not to mention Ji Xinyu who ran like a whirlwind. In less than an hour, she had already walked through all the pavilions and buildings. No. He was nowhere to be seen. However, there were some places that had been prepared with fruits and other ingredients. The fruits were placed on the table while the ingredients were in the kitchen. Ji Xinyu even found a letter in his small living room. There were only a few short sentences on the letter. I have something to do outside. You can continue cultivating and leave after you've fully recovered. Ji Xinyu. She looked at the signature. It was left yesterday. It seemed that he had left yesterday. She was the only one left on this island. Where would he go? Could it be that something had happened outside? Is he in a hurry to go out and deal with it? Could it be that the Ziyun sect, almost without thinking, Ji Xinyu raised her hand and searched for a sound-transmitting talisman on her body. After searching for a long time, she still couldn't find a sound-transmitting talisman. Instead, she took out a letter. For the sake of your cultivation, I'm confiscating all sound-transmitting talismans. Once you've completely recovered and left this place, you can search for it in an acacia tree 50 miles from here. Ji Xinyu, this was tantamount to completely cutting off her connection to the outside world. But she was concerned about her own sect. What if something happened? Ji Xinyu clenched her fists. This person was too arbitrary. He did things without consulting her at all. She knew that he was being kind, but she didn't want his kindness now. Chapter 3007. She would not be able to continue practicing if she was stuck in the drum and worried. No, she had to go out. She had already recovered 2/5 of her martial arts, so it should not be difficult for her to leave this place. She knew that there was a protective barrier here, but her ability to break barriers was very strong, so this barrier should not be difficult for her. An hour later, Ji Xinyu sat on a big rock by the sea, panting. She looked at the letter in her hand and clenched her fists again and again. The sky here was obviously the same as the sky outside, but when she flew up, she frequently hit walls. The barrier around this island was not ordinary. She used countless methods but still could not break it. Not only did she not break it, but she also shook down a letter. On the letter, there was still Rong Yu Tianlan's handwriting. If you focus on practicing, you can recover in 7 days. Before your power fully recovers, you will not be able to break the barrier here. The letter even had a specific method to break the barrier here. Ji Xinyu had already tried, and her power was indeed not up to par. It seemed that he had considered all possibilities. Ji Xinyu sat by the sea for a while and also understood a principle. If the outside world was really turned upside down, then with her current ability, she could only be cannon fodder if she went out, and nothing would change. It was better to recover all her power first and then go out to take a look. Besides, he was out now, and he knew what she cared about the most. He would definitely ensure the safety of the Ziyun sect for her. With him watching over it, her sect should not have any accidents. Moreover, she still had those senior brothers. Those people were not easy to deal with. If any danger really came, they would be able to resist for a while. For now, she could only comfort herself like this. Then she jumped up and went back to the treehouse to practice. She had to practice hard and strive to recover as soon as possible. Didn't Rong Yu Tianlan say that she could recover in 7 days? She would strive to be earlier, and earlier. After she recovered and went out, the first thing she would do was to return to the Ziyun sect. The second thing was to find Rong Yu Tianlan and have a good fight with him. It would be best if she could also lock him in a place where he could not come out. The moon god's sword had always been by her side. Just now, when she was trying to break the barrier, it had also used a lot of strength. However, the barrier was too strange, and it was not something that could be broken by a divine weapon. Because of this, it was even despised by Ji Xinyu. She despised it for dropping the ball at a crucial moment, but it turned out that it wasn't that strong after all. The moon god's sword was despised to the point of depression. It felt that this barrier also had a grudge with it. After it caught up with Ji Xinyu's footsteps, it suddenly appeared in front of her eyes, the tip of its sword constantly swaying, as if it was tilting its head and sizing her up. Ji Xinyu looked at it and thought that it was going to kill its master. She suddenly took a step back and looked at it coldly. "What are you doing?" Moon God's sword said, "Master, I realize that you are full of energy right now. Your eyes are very bright, and your face is very red." Ji Xinyu was speechless. "Since when have I not been full of energy?" My face is red because I was busy just now. No, master, you're not the same as before. Ah, what's different? Ji Shinhua raised her eyebrows. You used to be like a man. Now you look very feminine. In the past, she was forthright and magnanimous, and did things swiftly and decisively. If one did not know her identity, she really looked like a man when she was dressed as a man. Moreover, she had a faint, dejected and world-weary temperament, as if she did not care about life and death. Chapter 3008. But now, her face was flushed red and her eyes were as bright as stars. Although she was angry, she still had the aura of a delicate girl. Her whole person gave off a feeling of vitality and vitality. Of course, the moon god's sword could not summarize so much. It only said its intuition. You used to have a strong murderous aura when you were angry, but now you look like an angry little girl with rich expressions, like a young girl yearning for love. Ji Shinhua was speechless. She slapped the sword away. Get lost, you're the one who's yearning for love. She dashed away. On the way, she could not help but raise her hand to touch her cheek. Her cheeks were very hot, and her heart was beating very happily. She also felt that her current mood was indeed different from before. Originally, when she saw the green mountains and clear waters, it did not shock her. Now, when she looked at the flowers by the roadside, they seemed to be swaying endlessly in spring. What was wrong with her? Was it really like what the moon god's sword said, that she was yearning for love? Was she in love? Ji Shinhua's heart beat wildly again, and Rongyue Tianlan's figure flashed across her mind. Stop. Now was not the time to think about these messy things. She really needed to quickly recover from her cultivation. Everything could wait until she recovered her cultivation. Ziyun sect. The Ziyun sect seemed to be calm and peaceful, just like usual. However, the third disciple on duty this year, Ji Shinhua's third senior brother, felt that something was not quite right. Originally, the Ziyun sect's disciples did not stay in the Ziyun sect often. Except for the eldest senior brother who was always here, the others would come back once a year to help the eldest senior brother deal with the sect's affairs. As for the senior brothers and junior brothers who were not on duty, they would come back to visit their master from time to time. And people who were not from the Ziyun sect were not allowed to take half a step into the Ziyun sect except for their master's birthday. This time, the third senior brother was on duty. A few days ago, it was no different from usual. But 5 days ago, ninth senior brother Xia Fenglu suddenly came back, and he brought an outsider with him. He said it was his friend, called Huang Qinglu. At that time, the disciples guarding the gate did not want to break the rules, nor did they want to offend the ninth senior uncle, so they came to ask him. After all, the disciples guarding the gate were under his command. Just as he was about to rush over, eldest senior brother had already led the two of them in. Not only did he come in, he even led them to master. Since eldest senior brother had made the decision, third senior brother could not say anything. Eldest senior brother had personally arranged accommodations for the two of them. What was strange was that eldest senior brother had actually arranged for Xia Fenglu and Huang Qinglu to stay in the same room even though there were so many rooms in the Ziyun sect. He had even given the two of them special privileges, allowing them to wander around the Ziyun sect as they pleased. No one was allowed to stop them. Third senior brother was a straightforward person. He felt that it was fine for his ninth junior brother to stroll around casually, but why should an outsider like Huang Qinglu casually stroll around? He didn't like this and couldn't help but ask his master for his opinion. At that time, his master was fiddling with a pearl that shone like moonlight. Hearing his doubts, he casually told him not to worry about it. He also said that this Huang Qinglu was an old friend of his and could be trusted. Since master had said so, third senior brother had nothing else to say. However, there was still a knot in his heart, and he couldn't help but pay more attention to Huang Qingliu's whereabouts. That night, he found something unusual. In the middle of the night, his 9th junior brother and Huang Qingliu came out of the room. Under the starlight, 9th junior brother's face was not very good, and he spoke bluntly to Huang Qingliu. Chapter 3009. The two of them seemed to be arguing. 3rd senior brother vaguely heard 2 sentences, "You'd better pray that she's fine, or I'll be the first to sacrifice you." Huang Qingliu said softly, "As long as you do it within 10 days, she'll be fine." At that time, 3rd senior brother had accidentally stepped on a dead branch and alarmed the 2 people who were arguing. The 2 of them immediately looked at him. He did not know if it was an illusion, but 3rd senior brother felt like he was instantly surrounded by a murderous aura. However, the murderous aura disappeared in a blink of an eye. Xia Fenglu walked directly to him. 3rd senior brother. 3rd senior brother was a little dizzy after that. He could not even remember clearly. When he regained consciousness, he found himself lying in his room. Everything that happened at night seemed to be a dream. He vaguely remembered everything that happened at night. After thinking about it, he directly ran to visit 9th junior brother. However, he met eldest senior brother on the way. Eldest senior brother told him that 9th junior brother and Huang Qingliu had urgent matters to attend to and had left early in the morning after bidding farewell to master. Eldest senior brother's face was a little pale, as if he had not slept the entire night. Thus, he hurriedly chatted with him for a while before leaving. 3rd senior brother was a little confused about whether last night was a dream or not, but he could not find anyone to confirm it. After Xia Fenglu and Huang Qingliu left, 3rd senior brother kept feeling that something was wrong. Later, he finally found out what was wrong. The wild beast valley at the back of the mountain suddenly became much quieter. Originally, there were often the roars of various wild beasts, but now, only a few voices could be heard occasionally, and they were still weak. 3rd senior brother was puzzled and wanted to go there to take a look. That place was a forbidden area. Without master's permission, no disciple was allowed to go near it. Thus, 3rd senior brother only wanted to take a look from afar. If he found that something was really wrong, then he would report to master. He went at night. In the end, before he reached the vicinity of the wild beast valley, he saw master standing near the entrance of the valley, looking at the wild beast valley from afar as if he was thinking about something. Looking from afar under the moonlight, master's back seemed a little bleak. After a while, he heard master sigh softly, "What will come will come." That sigh was very faint, and 3rd senior brother almost did not hear it clearly. He only faintly felt that master, who had always been lazy and casual, seemed to have something on his mind this time. 3rd senior brother was about to go over and greet master when he saw eldest senior brother coming out of the valley and reporting something to master. The 2 of them were probably using a secret language, so 3rd senior brother didn't know what they were talking about. He only saw that their expressions were somewhat heavy. In the end, Grandmaster Ziyun let out a soft sigh and said, "This is also a type of fate. Have you gotten rid of them?" Eldest senior brother replied, "Don't worry, master. I know what I'm doing." Then, the master and disciple left. 3rd senior brother was filled with curiosity, so he made a bold move. He secretly snuck into Beast Valley, only to find that it was very deserted. Originally, there were all kinds of strange beasts roaming the Beast Valley, but after he went in and patrolled for a long time, he only saw a few weak ones. They were still cowering in the grass, but when they heard someone coming, they all ran away like rabbits. 3rd senior brother did not give up and walked around again. In the end, he found the skeleton of an animal in an extremely remote corner. The skeleton seemed to belong to a 2-winged lion. It was not scary to find the skeleton of an animal in such a place. After all, the animals in this valley had always been prey to the strong. Every day, animals were killed and eaten. Scattered bones could often be seen in the valley. Chapter 30:10. But this skeleton was a little strange. Its fur was still there, but its flesh was gone. It was really just skin and bones, as if something had sucked all its flesh and blood dry. The winged lion was an extremely ferocious beast, and stood at the top of the food chain in this valley. It was unusual for it to suddenly die here. Third senior brother was about to go forward to check the lion's cause of death, but when he raised his head, he saw eldest senior brother. Trespassing into the Beast Valley was originally a serious crime. Third senior brother was caught red-handed and thought that he would be punished to face the wall for a few years. Unexpectedly, eldest senior brother did not plan to expose him. He even led him around the Beast Valley a few more times. The two of them found some bones of ferocious beasts that had been sucked dry. Eldest senior brother told him that there was an abnormality in the Beast Valley. A blood-sucking monster had appeared, and this monster was very powerful. It came and went without a trace, and no one knew what kind of mutation it was. He and his master had not found the monster's whereabouts until today. His master and he were afraid that it would cause panic among the disciples, so they sealed off the news. He and his master were searching for the monster's whereabouts, but they did not have enough manpower. He was planning to gather all the junior brothers to discuss the plan to eliminate the monster. Ninth senior brother and Huang Qinglu also came back because of this matter. Now the two of them went out to ask for help, so they left early. After eldest senior brother said this, the doubts in third senior brother's heart disappeared without a trace. When the sect was in trouble, the disciple naturally had to bravely take the lead. Third senior brother immediately volunteered to go out and ask for help. He had a wide circle of friends, and still had some capable friends. However, eldest senior brother waved his hand and said that the mountain needed to be patrolled, but they did not have enough manpower. He still led the disciples to guard the mountain, and he and his master would ask for help. At this point, third senior brother naturally could not say anything else, and immediately agreed. While the two of them were talking, eldest senior brother received a sound transmission from Ji Xinyu. Third senior brother knew this junior sister's ability. She was even stronger than the rest of them. Ji Xinyu asked about the situation in the mountain. Third senior brother thought that eldest senior brother would tell the truth to little junior sister and ask her to come back quickly. However, he did not expect eldest senior brother to only report the good news to little junior sister, saying that everything was normal. After the voice transmission talisman ended, he could not help but ask eldest senior brother for the reason. Eldest senior brother sighed and said, "Junior sister has been contacting me recently to ask about the sect's affairs. She must have sensed something, which is why she is so worried. With her personality, she would definitely come back immediately to check on it. However, she has not returned for a long time. Obviously, she has encountered some accident that has hindered her and prevented her from coming back. If that's the case, why tell her the truth and make her worry?" His words were so reasonable that third senior brother had nothing to say in reply. After the two of them finished patrolling the mountain, eldest senior brother handed over the task of patrolling to him. Third senior brother had been patrolling for 2 days with a worried heart, but nothing had happened in the past 2 days. However, third senior brother could not sleep that night. He wanted to walk around the sect again, and in the process, he accidentally heard 2 disciples gossiping. One of the disciples said that in his sleep, he heard a roaring sound coming from the Beast Valley, as if the beast in the valley was experiencing some kind of doomsday. He was frightened and wanted to get up to take a look, but he tripped and fell. When he woke up, it was already dawn. He did not know if the sound was a dream, and even asked his companion if he heard it. Chapter 30:11. His companion shook his head like a rattledrum. He said that he slept very well that night and did not hear anything. He even teased the disciple who heard the sound and asked if he had a nightmare. The two disciples were chatting and third senior brother heard it. Third senior brother was a little stunned because the time that the two disciples talked about was the night when Xia Fenglu and Huang Qinglu returned. He then thought about how he fainted for no reason and felt that there was something fishy about it. But when he told eldest senior brother about it, eldest senior brother said that the blood-sucking monster probably had some special ability that affected people's thinking and caused them to have nightmares. The story of the nightmare was enough to cover up this strange incident. Third senior brother was skeptical. He still didn't believe that he was dreaming. He secretly visited a few more disciples, but they all slept very soundly that night. No one heard anything else. Third senior brother finally believed that he was dreaming. He knew that his junior sister had a lot of experience in the martial world, so he could not help but contact her. He wanted to tell her about what had happened in the past few days and ask her for advice. But he did not expect that his junior sister's voice transmission talisman would not go through. After 8 days, Crystal Sky Ocean welcomed another uninvited guest. Crystal Sky Ocean liked to have hurricanes all year round. There would be one every day. It changed the scenery of Crystal Sky Ocean completely. The icebergs changed their appearance every day. The old ones were smashed and new ones were born. There were changes every day. If one did not have a strong sense of direction, they would not be able to find this place just by looking at landmarks. This kind of hurricane could tear apart icebergs. Usually, no one would dare to stand in the middle of a hurricane. But now, in the middle of the hurricane, there were two people standing in the air. One was a black-robed man, and the other was a jade-robed man. The black-robed man was black from head to toe. Only his face was snow-white. Even his lips were slightly pale. The aura around him was colder than the ice and snow in the sky. Huang Luqing, open the sea. If anything happens to her, I will skin you alive. The eyes of the man in the light green robe dimmed, and he replied, Yes, my ice realm can trap her soul and prevent it from leaking out, so nothing will happen to her. With a wave of his sleeve, a light blue ray of light cut through the sea surface. The turbulent sea level actually rolled and separated into two sides, gradually revealing a dark passage. With a flash, the black-robed man leaped into the tunnel. Huang Luqing stood in the middle of the hurricane, supporting the blue light, pursing her thin lips. It was obvious that the sea-splitting technique consumed a lot of mental power. As time passed, his face became paler and paler, and his fingertips trembled slightly. An hour later, a figure flashed in the dark passageway. The black-robed man jumped out. The moment the black-robed man jumped out, the blue light on Huang Luqing's fingertips finally disappeared. The seawater that had been forced apart came back together with a crashing sound, emitting an earth-shattering roar like a landslide or a tsunami. Huang Luqing's figure swayed slightly. Before he could stand firm, the black-robed man had charged over to him like a ghost. With a raise of his hand, a black light blasted towards Huang Luqing, causing Huang Luqing to stagger and almost fall into the sea. The black-robed man was empty-handed. He gritted his teeth and said, Bastard, there is no such thing as your ice realm down there. She is not here at all. Huang Luqing seemed to be injured by his attack. Blood gushed out from the corner of her mouth, but her body was very straight. Chapter 30:12. The black-robed man's words made his expression change. He said, Impossible, and jumped into the sea. The black-robed man looked down, his eyes dark. He clenched his fists and pursed his lips. A moment later, he made up his mind and jumped into the sea. This time, after 2 hours, the turbulent sea suddenly split into two sides. Huang Luqing pulled the black-robed man's sleeve out of the sea and jumped onto an ice mountain. The black-robed man's face was pale, but his eyes seemed to be burning with fire. He said word by word, Huang Luqing, what do you say? Why is she not here? Huang Luqing's face was not much better than his. She was probably rescued by someone. Rescued? You put her in such a purgatory of ice and hid her at the bottom of the sea. Who can save her? Is it your kind? Didn't you say that no one in the world can break your ice world? Huang Luqing took a deep breath. I don't know the details, but my ice world can't be broken easily, and it's even more impossible for those monsters at the bottom of the sea. She can only be rescued by someone. Demon Master, you could try to contact her. Maybe you can. Her words reminded the black-robed man. His eyes lit up, and he immediately took out a voice transmission talisman. A moment later, his face turned even paler. The voice transmission talisman could not be connected at all. She was not saved at all. The black-robed man was in a daze, and the voice transmission talisman in his hand fell into the sea. His eyes slowly moved to Huang Luqing, and his voice was cold. Huang Luqing, you killed her. I will bury you with her. A black light quickly condensed in his palm. Huang Luqing straightened her body and looked at him. Devil Master, your subordinate is only doing this to force you to awaken. Also, she may not necessarily be dead. If there is no external force acting on that ice shell, it is absolutely impossible to open it. So the possibility of her being rescued is very high. Even if Demon Master kills me, I will still say the same. As he spoke, he quickly checked the surroundings. However, so many days had passed, and the environment here changed every day. Even if there were any clues left behind, they would not be able to find them now. Huang Luqing, I remember that you have the illusion mirror technique. You can check what has happened in a place. You can use that method to check. I must find her, dead or alive. Huang Luqing's body stiffened slightly. Your Majesty, that illusion mirror technique is extremely taxing on psychokinesis, so what if I use my telekinesis? I won't take your life. Quickly use that method. The black-robed man's voice was cold. Huang Luqing looked at him deeply, closed her eyes slightly and pondered for a moment before finally agreeing, all right. Your subordinate obeys. When the blue light hit the surface of the sea, the originally turbulent surface of the sea gradually condensed. The surface of the sea was like a large mirror, slowly reflecting an image. A figure appeared in the image. It was the scene of Rong Yuetian saving Ji Xinyue. This scene was fast-forwarded. It was extremely fast, from when he saved her from the water to when he woke her up and finally left. This technique was not an ordinary consumption of energy. Huang Luqing desperately held on, and after a cup of tea's time, the mirror finally disappeared. Silence, the whole world was silent, only the whistling of the cold wind swept through the world. The black-robed man clenched his fingers tightly, his knuckles turning white. He wasn't stupid. Although the scene flashed by, he could see that the two of them had some physical contact. Chapter 30:13. Rongyue Tianlan was obviously chasing after a beauty, and Ji Xinyu. She didn't seem to reject Rongyue Tianlan, and even had feelings for him. The woman he had liked for so many years, the woman he wanted to get, was getting further and further away from him. What was worse was that the date of her rescue should be 6 days ago, and she had been with Rongyue Tianlan in this place for 5 whole days. In these 5 days, she had contacted several people through the sound transmission talisman, but she didn't contact him. It seemed that she was really suspicious of him. She was afraid that she wanted to get rid of him. They might not be able to go back at all. The black-robed man's fingers trembled slightly, and his thin lips were tightly pursed. It was originally a happy thing to know that the person he was concerned about was alive and well, but the interaction between her and Rongyue Tianlan made him feel as if a huge rock was pressing down on his heart, making him almost unable to breathe. He kept looking at the disappearing mirror, and didn't look at Huang Luqing, who was pale and had blood on the corner of her lips because of the extreme consumption of her mind power. Huang Luqing stood in front of him with difficulty. Devil Master, she is indeed fine, let's leave. Your body hasn't fully recovered, and this place is not good for your health. The black-robed man glanced at her coldly, and his voice was slightly cold. Quickly go and check where he took her, I want to find her. Huang Luqing's eyes flashed slightly, and she sighed softly. Devil Master, Rongyue Tianlan is already an immortal, and he has no fixed residence, and his whereabouts are all over the world. If he wants to hide someone, it's not easy to find. Originally, Devil Master knew a tracking technique, and it was not difficult to find him. But when Devil Master awakened, he couldn't bear to consume all the beasts, so his power was not fully recovered, and he couldn't use that skill. I think it's better to wait for Devil Master to fully recover before looking for her. Since she is still alive, she might come out voluntarily in the future. Moreover, Rongyue Tianlan already knows that Devil Master is about to awaken, and he will definitely come out to stop it. At that time, they might come out together, and there is no need for Devil Master to look for them. When they come out together, maybe they are already married. The black-robed man's voice was cold. No. I must find her immediately and take her away from Rongyue Tianlan. His eyes were like poisonous needles. You don't have a solution now. Huang Luqing was stunned for a moment, and after a moment of silence, she said, if Devil Master must find her, you can only use one strategy. The black-robed man's eyes lit up. What plan? Huang Luqing said, this subordinate has investigated this exalted immortal beforehand. A few days ago, he had a close relationship with Ji Xinyue's younger sister, Ji Tianyue. The black-robed man said impatiently, I already knew that. But that guy has already broken up with Ji Tianyue, why mention her? Huang Luqing said indifferently, although he and Ji Tianyue broke up, he once promised Ji Tianyue a condition, saying that if she were to encounter a real-life danger, he would save her once. The black-robed man's eyes lit up. Are you serious? Huang Luqing nodded. This subordinate learned about this from Ji Tianyue's maidservant. It can't be false. The black-robed man slowly clenched his fists. Very good, then he would lure the snake out of its hole. These days, Ji Tianyue's life was extremely bitter. Her house was broken, her meals were cold, and her bed was made of wood. For someone like her who had been spoiled since childhood, this was simply a nightmare. Moreover, there was no time for her to wake up. My dearest, happy Singles Day, shopping is awesome, you can find a good husband and buy good things. Chapter 30:14. She cried, threw a tantrum, and even smashed things, but none of that attracted a single glance from her father. She regretted it even more. In order to make her father value her again, she even told the servant girl that heavenly immortal Rong-yu had not given up on her and promised to save her if she was in danger. This proved that he still liked her. In order to verify this, she even took out the precious sound-transmitting talisman from the servant girl. The servant girl only chuckled and left. She had no intention of passing the message. That night, Ji Xinyu was shivering on her bed in the cold palace. It was already winter, but there was only a thin blanket on her bed. It could not resist the bone-chilling cold at all. Just as she was having trouble falling asleep, there was a sudden breeze and a black shadow appeared in front of her. In the dark night, she could not see the person's face clearly. She could only vaguely feel that the person was tall and handsome. Her heart skipped a beat and she opened her mouth to call out. That person waved his sleeve and Ji Tianyu's entire body froze. Not only could she not move, she could not even make a sound. That person's loose black clothes were like a bat in the dark night. He calmly walked forward and touched her body with his cold fingers. Ji Tianyu did not know what he was going to do. She opened her eyes wide in fear and felt that his fingers were as cold as snow. Goosebumps instantly appeared on her skin. That person was so close to her, but she could not see his face clearly. That person's face seemed to have merged with the night. That person was not trying to take advantage of her. Instead, he took out a unique sound-transmitting talisman from her storage space. Then, he sensed the psychokinesis aura on it and smiled deeply. Ji Tianyu actually wanted to shout that she was protected by heavenly immortal Rongyu, but she could not do so because her acupoints were sealed. She only felt that person's smile had a sinister chill, causing her to shiver again. That person waved his sleeve at her face and she fainted. Ji Tianyu was woken up by the cold. She was only wearing a single shirt when she was thrown into a crevice in the ice. There were slippery ice walls on both sides. When she looked up, she could only see a small part of the sky. This crevice was at least 3,000 to 4,000 feet deep and was extremely narrow. She was on a platform at the bottom of the crevice. This platform was less than 2 feet wide and was extremely slippery. This platform was located in the middle of the ice crevice. The crevice was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Ji Tianyu didn't understand why she was here. When she saw the situation around her, she was scared silly. She desperately pressed her body against the ice wall, shaking like a leaf in the wind and rain. She had already regained her freedom, but with her mediocre martial arts skills, she couldn't go up at all. "Why did you harm me?" She screamed, "Help!" Her voice almost tore through the air, but the ice crevice was too deep and her voice couldn't travel out. It hit the ice wall and made a buzzing sound. No one bothered with her. She didn't know how many times she had shouted until her voice was hoarse, but no one came. She shivered uncontrollably from the cold and grew more and more desperate. Finally, she burst into tears. She didn't know how long she had been crying. It was so long that even she felt despair. Suddenly, a figure flashed on the ice wall above her. A black-clothed man appeared. That man covered the sky above her and blocked all the light. She couldn't see the man's face clearly. She only felt that the man's black robe was like a messenger of the night. The coldness of that man was so heavy that it made her shiver from the bottom of her heart. Chapter 30:15. She also recognized that this person should be the one who brought her here. "You. What do you want to do? Why did you bring me here? Let me tell you, I'm not someone to be trifled with. My father is the South Sky Emperor, my sister is the famous Princess Ji Xinyue, and immortal Rongyu also protects me like a treasure. If anything happens to me, they won't forgive you. Let me go, I can pretend this never happened." Ji Tianyu threatened while trembling. The man laughed coldly. "Do you want to live or not? If you want to live, use the sound-transmitting talisman that Rongyu Tianlan gave you to ask him to save your life." Ji Tianyu was stunned and widened her eyes. "How do you know I have this sound-transmitting talisman?" That person didn't answer and only looked at her coldly. Ji Tianyu suddenly had an epiphany. Are you going to harm my brother Rongyu, so you want me to ask him to come here?" I don't want to be fooled by you. I won't do anything to betray brother Rongyu." That black-robed person laughed coldly, then. "It's up to you. To tell you the truth, this is the vast ice field, it's usually deserted. If no one comes to save you, only death awaits you. Choose for yourself." Ji Tianyu. Her face was pale, and her mouth was slightly open, but she couldn't say anything. That black-robed person turned to leave, but suddenly seemed to remember something and said, "If you ask him for help, you can say that you came here to relieve boredom and accidentally fell into this ice crevice. Don't say that I brought you here, or else he wouldn't have come if he knew this was a trap." Then only death awaits you. No way. I won't say that. You're the one who wants to plot against Brother Rongyu, I must remind him. Ji Tianyue shouted subconsciously. That black-robed person seemed to laugh and said coldly, if you're not afraid that he won't care about you, just tell him the truth. His figure flashed, and like a wisp of smoke, he floated upwards and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianyue, her face was pale, and her body kept trembling. The black-robed man was right. If she told the truth, Rongyu Tianlan would not jump in if she knew it was a trap. Then she could only freeze to death here. But if he lied and deceived Rongyu Tian, he might suffer a great loss from the black-robed man without knowing the reason. Was she lying or not? This place was bone-chilling cold. Standing on this small platform, Ji Tianyue's hands and feet were frozen stiff. She slowly squatted down, hugged her knees, and wept. After a long while, she finally took out the voice transmission talisman with trembling hands. On the icy plains, the black-robed man stood facing the wind, his sleeves fluttering in the wind. A moment later, Huang Luqing emerged from the crack in the ice and landed in front of him. Devil Master, you guessed right. That girl did as you instructed. Ha, it seems like this little princess cherishes her life very much, even willing to sacrifice the life of her beloved for this. The black-robed man smiled coldly. She has always been this kind of person. For her own life, she can sacrifice anyone. How did Rongyu Tianlan reply to her? Rongyu Tianlan's answer was very simple. He told her to wait where she was and that he would come. He didn't suspect anything. I don't think so. That girl is better at lying than you. I almost believed her. The black-robed man nodded. That's good. Then let's wait quietly for him to take the bait. Chapter 30:16. Huang Luqing pondered for a moment. Demon Lord, I think you should restore your power first before dealing with Rongyu Tianlan. Your current power is not even half of what it used to be. I'm afraid you're not his opponent. The black robe of the man in black fluttered. After a while, he smiled coldly. It's only a matter of a night for me to fully recover. The other side is not ready yet, so there's no hurry. This time, we're just luring the snake out of its hole and testing his true strength. He looked up at the sky. He knows the technique of traveling 1,000 miles in an instant. He should be here soon. How's the arrangement? Huang Luqing nodded. It's all set up. We're just waiting for the fish to take the bait. The man in black robe's eyes flashed with a fiery light. It was a kind of revenge that was about to succeed. Rongyu Tianlan, I've prepared a feast for you. I'll invite you to taste it. This time, he didn't really want to take Rongyu Tianlan's life. After all, that person was at the level of a great immortal and couldn't be killed easily. However, he was confident that he could injure or even seriously injure him. As long as Rongyu Tianlan was injured, he would definitely return to his current hiding place to heal. That way, they could follow him to his lair and find Ji Xinyu. This was the idea of the man in black robe. Huang Luqing was an expert in setting up hidden weapon arrays. Back then, those immortals had suffered a lot under his arrays. Therefore, many people had lost their lives. As long as Rongyu Tianlan appeared on this ice field, he would fall into their trap. Even if he didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin. The two of them hid in the air, waiting for Rongyu Tianlan to fall into the trap. They would then give him a fatal blow. 2 hours passed. 4 hours passed. 10 hours passed. 16 hours passed. 16 hours passed. A day passed. The sun rose and set in the sky. However, there was still no one on the huge ice field. Ji Tianyu, who was under the ice crack, was still crying and screaming at first. Later, her voice became softer and softer, weaker and weaker. In such a world of ice and snow, even a 7-feet-tall man couldn't stand it, let alone a delicate little girl like Ji Tianyu. Huang Luqing was afraid that she would freeze to death, so she went down to see her once. She found that although she was already unconscious from the cold, she was still alive and could still hold on for a day or two. They waited until the sun set the next day. Just when the black-robed man and Huang Luqing thought that Rongyue Tianlan would not come, a figure finally appeared in the distant eastern sky. Here it comes. The black-robed man had sharp eyes and saw that the person was Rongyue Tianlan. He was still dressed in a blue robe. He flew over from the horizon like a blue cloud. He had used an ordinary flying spell to fly over. The black-robed man's lips curled into a cold smile. It seemed like this heavenly immortal Rongyu really didn't think much of this little princess Ji Tianyue. Although she had promised to save her, she had come so late. Rongyu Yishanlan finally landed on the snowy ground. He had been observing the surrounding environment while holding a voice transmission talisman in his hand. From time to time, he would correct his position and look for directions. Obviously, he was not familiar with the terrain. Although he could determine Ji Tianyue's general location, it was still difficult to pinpoint it accurately. He seemed to be searching for the footprints left behind by Ji Tianyue. After a while, he finally found them. A woman's small footprints meandered towards the direction of the crack. After Rongyue Tianlan carefully observed the footprints, he seemed to be relieved. He followed the footprints and walked over. Chapter 30:17. The black-robed man sneered in his heart. It seemed that this exalted immortal still did not understand the climate here. It would snow at least once a day. Even if Ji Tianyue had left behind footprints, it had been a day and a night, and the footprints had long been blown away by the wind and snow. The footprints left behind now were made by Huang Luqing, and it completely matched the size of Ji Tianyue's small feet. Everything was as the black-robed man and Huang Luqing had imagined. Rongyue Tianlan walked step by step into the array they had set up. The array was finally activated, and all kinds of earth-shattering noises were incessant on the ice field. Bolts of lightning struck the array, and snow fog filled the sky. All kinds of ice and snow condensed into weapons, like a hornet's nest that had been poked, shot in the direction of Rongyue Tianlan. The originally flat snow surface directly cracked open, and all kinds of blue poisonous hidden weapons shot out from the cracks, an inescapable net. It could be said that what was set up around Rongyue Tianlan was a real inescapable net. Even the 4 kings of this continent would be flustered and overwhelmed if they encountered such a sneak attack. There was no escape if he was injured. Rongyue Tianlan was also taken aback by the sudden danger. He dodged left and right in the array, but after all, it was too sudden. He was in a passive position at first, and it was obviously difficult to turn the situation around later. Soon, he was injured. His shoulders, ribs, legs, arms. He was hit several times, and blood dyed his blue robe red. Those hidden weapons were all poisonous. After he was injured, his movements became slower and slower, but he did not give up and attacked left and right, trying to break out of the encirclement. The black-robed man hid in the air and watched coldly, a bloodthirsty smile on his lips. During the war years, he and Huang Qinglu had encountered exalted immortals before. After being ambushed in such an array, they were also seriously injured and almost lost their lives. Now, Rongyue Tianlan was indeed not out of his expectations. It was only a matter of time before he was seriously injured. The black-robed man held his chin with his fingers. It seemed that he had overestimated this opponent. This exalted immortal Rongyue was just a so-so, there was nothing happier than seeing his love rival trapped in the inescapable net he had set up, so the black-robed man, who had always been gloomy, could not help but laugh happily like a child. Huang Qinglu was standing beside him, manipulating the array formation to continue attacking Rongjuishan. He glanced at the black-robed man and suddenly saw his childlike smile. His heart skipped a beat and his fingers trembled slightly. It had been far too long since he had seen the demon lord like this. Rongjuishan, who was inside the array, had suffered countless injuries. Her blue robe was almost soaked in blood and was no longer as free and easy as before. She looked like she was in a sorry state. His footsteps were unsteady, and he was obviously an arrow at the end of its flight. The black-robed man's figure flashed and he suddenly charged into the formation. Huang Qinglu was shocked. He knew that the Devil Lord would plot against Rongyue Tianlan, but he felt that it was not the right time yet. He should wait a little longer. The black-robed man was in midair, and his thunderous palm had already smashed down. This move contained the essence of almost all of his cultivation, and it was once his greatest weapon to defeat his enemies. Back then, countless immortals above the divine monarch level had died under this move. The black and misty palm chi pressed down on Rongwutian like Mount Tai. Rongwutian couldn't dodge in time and was hit directly by this move. Boom! With a loud bang, Rongyue Tianlan, who was covered in blood, had a flash of red light around her body. She actually exploded under this palm. Chapter 30:18. What kind of mutual destruction move was this? The black-robed man was stunned. Because the distance was too close and the red light from the explosion was too fast, he did not dodge and was hit by the red light. The dust on the snowfield settled. The black-robed man fell to the ground. His face was pale and there were blood stains on the corner of his lips. His black robe was covered in dark patches. The red light that hit him was not the real red light but blood plasma. The blood plasma shot directly on his body. The huge impact made him vomit blood and stained his robe. The price he paid for this attack was not small, and he suffered injuries that were neither light nor heavy. And Rongyue Tianlan had disappeared, and what appeared there was a broken puppet. The puppet was 2 feet tall and should have been filled with blood. But at this moment, there was a hole in the puppet and all the blood was sprayed out. It was like a deflated balloon. They were fooled. This Rongyue Tianlan was actually a fake. It should be a puppet made by Rongyue Tianlan. The black-robed man's fingers trembled. Huang Luqing was also stunned. She never thought that the net they had painstakingly set up was actually a fake person. If the one here was fake, then what about the real one? The black-robed man's figure flashed and went straight to the crack. Huang Luqing was stunned for a moment and also rushed over. The crack was still the same, but Ji Tianyue, who was originally imprisoned inside, was gone. The small platform was empty, not even a piece of cloth. The black-robed man clenched his fist and blue veins popped out. Huang Luqing was also speechless. They had set up a trap for Rongyue Tianlan, but they did not expect to be checkmated by Rongyue Tianlan. They had fallen into the trap of substituting one person for another. Rongyue Tianlan seemed to have seen through their plan, so he used a fake body to attract their attention while the real body sneaked into the ice crack to save the person. More importantly, when Rongyue Tianlan took the person away, he obviously cleaned up his aura. So Huang Luqing did not see when he took the person away and did not know which direction he fled to. The black-robed man's coldness almost froze the ice crack. It doesn't matter if we can't find their aura. He will definitely send her back to Nantian Palace. Let's go there and stop him. Huang Luqing opened her mouth but didn't say anything in the end. Only a hint of sadness flashed through her eyes. He understood that the Devil Master had already become obsessed with Ji Xinyu. If he could not find her, the Devil Master would not focus on recovering his powers and reorganizing the Great Cause, but so what if they found it? If he allowed that woman to stay by the Devil Lord's side, given her influence on the Devil Lord, he was afraid that the Devil Lord would not lead the Devil race to conquer the world again. It seemed that he had to find a way to quietly get rid of that woman completely in order to completely remove the stumbling block. Huang Liuqing's eyes flashed with a sharp glint. No matter what, he had to find Ji Xinyu through Rongyue Tianlan first. The two of them left like the wind, heading towards Nantian Palace. In fact, Ji Tianyu had been unconscious from the cold for a long time. She had endless nightmares, and cold sweat broke out all over her body. When she finally broke free from the nightmare and woke up, she found herself in an inn. The bedding on her body was warm, and the one serving her was the lady boss of the inn. Seeing that she had woken up, the lady boss breathed a sigh of relief. "Thank God, you're finally awake. The young master who sent you here asked me to pass a letter." Chapter 30:19. She handed over a letter. Ji Tianyu was stunned. She seemed to have understood something. She took the letter with trembling hands and opened it. There were only a few words on it. "The promise has been fulfilled. From now on, you and I have nothing to do with each other. When your body recovers, the lady boss will send you back to Nantian Palace. Take care." The flamboyant words were written by Rongyu Yishinlin. The room was originally as warm as spring, but Ji Xinyu's body trembled slightly. She was lost in thought for a long time. Suddenly, she searched her body like a madwoman. The lady boss of the inn opened her eyes wide and looked at the little girl who was searching herself like a madwoman. Finally, she couldn't help but ask, "Miss, what are you looking for?" Ji Xinyu took out everything on her body. Even her storage space was turned upside down. She searched every nook and cranny, nothing. Nothing at all. The sound transmission talisman that Rongyue Tianlan gave her was gone. Her face was ashen. She had used up all the opportunities that Rongyue Tianlan gave her. She had nothing to do with him anymore. She didn't even see him coming. She didn't even say a word to him. After all, she had been frozen in the ice crack for a day and a night. Frostbite had reached 80% of her body. Although she had woken up, her body was still very weak. The frostbite on her body also made her feel uncomfortable. "How long was I unconscious?" 3 days. How long has he been gone?" "Miss, are you asking about that gentleman? He left after putting you down." Ji Tianyu, the lady boss, saw her face full of disappointment and thought for a moment before adding, "That young master left some medicine for you, and I've been applying it for you these past few days. Fortunately, you have finally woken up. When will you go back? We can prepare a carriage." Ji Tianyu closed her eyes slightly. "How far is this place from Nantian Palace?" "About a few 100 miles. Ji Tianyu carefully packed her things. She had many good things on her body, including countless gold, silver, and jewels. She was originally very doted on by the South Heaven Emperor, and the South Heaven Emperor gave her a lot of treasures. When she came across something rare, she would put it into her storage space. Now, these things were all she had to make a living from now on. Naturally, she didn't want to go back to Nantian Palace. If she went back, she would be in the cold palace. Since she had already escaped by accident, she might as well wander the Jianghu alone. If her sister could do well in the Jianghu, she believed that she could do the same. She didn't believe that she could do worse than her elder sister. She clenched her fists and didn't notice the greedy gaze of the lady boss behind her when she saw the things she took out. In the end, Ji Tianyu was still a child with little experience in Jianghu. She committed a big taboo in Jianghu, not showing off one's wealth. Treasures moved people's hearts. Any one of the jewels in her hands was worth tens of thousands of gold. A single treasure was enough for an ordinary person to live a rich life for the rest of their lives, not to mention that she had so many of them with her. In fact, Rongyue Tianlan had left enough money for the lady boss. Not only could she live in this in leisurely for a few months, but she also had enough money to send her back. Rongyue Tianlan was also afraid that she would harm a little girl, so before he left, he even smashed a big stone to threaten the lady boss so that she wouldn't dare to have any evil intentions. His arrangement was not inappropriate. Originally, Ji Tianyue could have returned to the palace safely. But now, under the huge temptation, the lady boss was moved. Chapter 30-20. Xie Zhuke was extremely angry. He and Huang Luqing had been waiting in the shadows of Nantian Palace for 3 days, but they never saw the person they were waiting for. Not only did Rongyu Yishenlen not come, but even Ji Tianyue did not come back, 3 days. Even if Rongyu Yishenlen drove an old cow and a broken car, she could still send them back. It was obvious that Rongyu Yishenlen had seen through their plan again, so she had hidden with Ji Tianyue. Perhaps she had already brought Ji Tianyue back to her secret residence. Now, the two sisters had already met. Xie Zhuke clenched his fists again and again, resisting the urge to tear down Nantian Palace. He had been busy for so long and had planned for so long, but it was all for nothing. He was extremely depressed. At this moment, walking on the street, his entire body was filled with a coldness that kept people away. Huang Luqing had been silently following beside him. She knew that Xie Zhuke needed to vent. The two of them were extremely beautiful. Walking on the street like this was undoubtedly an eye-catching scene, attracting the affectionate gazes of countless women. When they passed by a brothel, the courtesans dressed in red and green upstairs could not help but throw handkerchiefs, flowers, and other things at them when they saw the two of them passing by. "Demon Master, do you want to find a girl?" Huang Luqing asked Xie Zhuke as she casually brushed away a flower that almost hit her head. Tens of thousands of years ago, Xie Zhuke had been extremely dissolute and had countless concubines by his side. He was a dissolute demon master. At that time, Huang Luqing could not stand his style and had tried to persuade him a few times. She had even fallen out with him because of this, but she still could not stop Xie Zhuke's dissolute nature. Xie Zhuke and Huang Luqing had met when they were children. Xie Zhuke had accidentally saved Huang Luqing's life. In order to repay Xie Zhuke, Huang Luqing had stayed by his side. At first, she was his playmate, and later, she became his military advisor. Xie Zhuke was a genius at cultivation. With Huang Luqing's help, he quickly unified the demon world and became its master. Xie Zhuke was quite kind when he was young. Perhaps it was because of the baptism of war and the countless assassinations and conspiracies that this once smart and kind child had become headstrong and arrogant. He had a very strong rebellious mentality. The more he was not allowed to do something, the more he wanted to do it. Huang Luqing stopped him from spending time on women, but he just had to take a bunch of concubines back. There were so many women around him that it was impossible to count. Finally, he took in a female spy from the immortal realm. That woman knew his whereabouts trajectory and sent it to the immortal realm, causing him to fall into a trap set by the immortal realm and be completely wiped out. And at that time, because Huang Luqing had a falling out with him, she left him for half a year. Half a year later, she heard the news of him being killed by a group of immortals. After Huang had awakened, he had Zhuke, a demon master, had Huang Luqing. He still remembered his back then Huang Luqing. He looked at him coldly. "Haven't you always been annoyed that I'm looking for women to have fun with?" Huang Luqing sighed and said, "This subordinate would rather you return to your original dissolute nature." He raised his head and looked at the women upstairs. There was no lack of outstanding beauty among them. One of them even looked somewhat similar to Ji Xinyue. He raised his sleeve and pointed at the woman. "Demon Master, how about that woman?" The woman seemed to know that she had been pointed out. She immediately winked at the two of them, seductive and soul-stirring. Chapter 30-21. Xie looked up and frowned slightly. He coldly said, "Dirty." He raised his sleeve, and a faint green light shot toward the building. Those women were leaning against the railing of the building and stroking their hair coquettishly. After the green light flashed, the railing suddenly broke. Amidst ear-piercing screams, the group of women fell straight down from the third floor and fell to the ground like dumplings. Huang Luqing. Such an unforeseen event naturally attracted a large number of onlookers, and the scene was a little chaotic. Huang Luqing took the opportunity to leave with Xie. He could already tell that not only had Xie shattered the railing, but he had also broken the throat of the woman who looked a little similar to Ji Xinyue. The other women might only be injured, but that woman would definitely die. The two of them quickly turned to another street. Huang Luqing could not help but ask, "Why did you kill her?" Xie voice was cold. She tarnished her appearance. How could he allow a woman who looked a little similar to Ji Xinyue to do that? Therefore, he had killed her without mercy. Huang Luqing. He tightened his grip on the fan. Although Xie had a group of beauties by his side, he had never truly fallen in love with any woman. In his eyes, all the women in the world were tools to vent his desires. Now, although he had recovered Xie memories and even his personality, his feelings for Ji Xinyue had not changed. In fact, his obsession had become even stronger. He would not stop until he got her. As the two of them walked, the sound of wings flapping suddenly came from above. The two of them looked up and saw a colorful bird flying past. Xie feet suddenly stopped. This bird was the soul-seeking bird. The bird flew directly to a tea house on the street. On the third floor of the tea house, a woman in white was sitting by the window. The soul-seeking bird had landed on her shoulder and was chirping non-stop. The woman in white was extremely beautiful and had an otherworldly aura. She tilted her head as if listening to the bird. After a while, she smiled gently and stroked the bird's head with her fingers. "Thank you for your hard work." Then, she took out a voice transmission talisman. A moment later, the call was connected. Rongyu Ishinlan's voice came from the other side. "Yunxi, you're back." Yunxi smiled sweetly. "Yes, I just came back and brought you good news. Do you want to come over?" The other side agreed very straightforwardly. "Yes." "Where are you?" Yunxi told him her address before turning off the voice transmission talisman. Xie and Huang Luqing looked at each other. This was really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. They couldn't find Rongyue Tianlan's whereabouts, but now he had delivered himself to their doorstep. Luqing, Rongyue Tianlan is extremely cunning. We must not reveal our whereabouts in advance this time. It won't be too late to make a move when we confirm his lair, Xie said. Huang Luqing tightened his grip on his fan. It had been a long time since he had heard Xie call him by his name. He paused for a moment before saying, "Yes, let's hide our tracks first." These two people's kung fu was top-notch. Not only were they proficient in the art of transformation, but they were also proficient in the art of invisibility. Soon, they concealed their tracks and went upstairs. There were not many people in the tea house. There were many empty seats on the third floor. The two of them found a seat and sat down. This table was quite far from Yunxi's table. It was in a corner, and there was a screen in front of it. Usually, even if someone sat at this table, it would be easy to overlook it. Chapter 30-22. This time, Rongyue Tianlan wasn't slow. He arrived within an hour. His clothes fluttered as he appeared in front of Yunxi with a faint smile. "Yunxi, I've made you wait." Yunxi was clearly very familiar with him as she smiled and called Rongyue Tianlan to sit down. Rongyue Tianlan's eyes fell on the bird and he asked, "How is it? Can it smell the aura of her soul?" Yunxi smiled and pushed a cup of tea over. "Don't worry, you rushed here in a hurry. You should drink a cup to moisten your throat first. I also just rushed here and I'm very tired. Let me catch my breath and I'll tell you in detail." Rongyue Tianlan shook his head. He knew that Yunxi liked to keep people in suspense. The more anxious you were, the calmer she would be to tease you. His eyes fell on Yunxi and he saw that her pretty face was indeed a bit pale. Even the bird looked tired as it panted with its head down. He wanted to urge Yunxi to tell him the result, but seeing her like this, his heart softened. He sat down and drank some tea. He took out a shining sword from his spatial storage and placed it on the table before waving his hand at the bird. The bird immediately swooped down and pecked at the sword. In just a moment, it swallowed the divine weapon into its stomach. After eating the special food, the bird looked a lot more spirited. Yunxi gave a soft sigh as she turned the teacup in her hand to look at Rongyue Tianlan. "You're really willing to part with it. This sword is also a peerless divine weapon, right? If you let it eat like this, you'll spoil it. It's worth it." Rongyue Tianlan only said these 3 words as he stroked the bird's feathers. The bird rubbed its beak against his hand in satisfaction to show its friendliness. "Tianlan, who is that Princess Ji Yu? What is her relationship with Yi Qianshang?" Yunxi couldn't help asking out of curiosity. Rongyue Tianlan was drinking tea when his hand holding the teacup paused. After pondering for a bit, he gave a sigh. "It seems like you transmigrated to the past when they first met. You don't know the ending." Yunxi smiled. "It should be like this. That little princess is so cute, she was played around by Yi Qianshang." Rongyue Tianlan's fingers trembled, and a little of the tea spilled out. He lowered his eyes for a moment and sighed. Actually, he didn't fall in love with Ji Yu at first, he was just using her. What happened next? Yunxi raised her eyebrows. A lot of things happened after that. Let's not talk about these things anymore. You just need to know that she married him in the end. She is his most beloved wife. Yunxi's eyes widened as she blurted out, "She's your wife." "It's her, Yi Qianshang's wife, the wife of my soul, not mine." Yunxi glared at him. "Isn't that the same? That part of your soul is also you. Tianlan, I didn't expect you to have a wife. You want the soul-searching bird to sniff out her aura and then find her on this continent. How do you know that she reincarnated on this continent?" Rongyue Tianlan raised her hand and rubbed the space between her eyebrows. She couldn't be bothered to explain to Yunxi the difference between his soul and hers. Yunxi continued to ask, "Do you want to find her and marry her?" Rongyue Tianlan shook his head slightly. "Not necessarily, I just want to know if she is. That part of my soul has let her down. If I find her, I will protect her for the rest of her life. I won't necessarily marry her." He now deeply suspected that Ji Yu was either Ji Shenyu or Ji Tianyu. It was even more likely that it was Ji Shenyu. Chapter 30-23. If it was confirmed that Ji Shenyu was Ji Yu, then of course he would marry her. A good marriage of 2 lifetimes, he definitely couldn't let it go. If Ji Tianyu was Ji Yu, then he would try to find a good husband for her and let her live a happy life. It would be his compensation to her, and he would still marry Ji Shenyu. No matter what, she was the one he liked now, and she was the one who affected all his heart. The two of them talked for a while, and Rongyue Tianlan gave Yunxi some pills to recover as soon as possible. Yunxi rested for a while and stood up. You should have a target, right? Where is the first person you want to test? Rongyue Tianlan looked at her and saw that her face was still a little pale. He pondered for a moment. She's not in this city. It's 800 miles away, Yunxi frowned slightly. So far. She hadn't recovered yet, and it was really difficult to ride a cloud for such a long distance. Rongyue Tianlan knew what she was worried about. Don't worry, I'll take you there. Yunxi smiled sweetly. Okay. The two of them went downstairs. Demon Master, should we follow them? Huang Luqing reminded Xie, who had been in a daze. The light in Xie eyes was a little strange, as if he was excited and disdainful. He clenched his fists and suddenly sneered. So he's already married. Then how can he be worthy of Xinyu's love? He's not worthy at all. Xinyu deserves the best, and Xinyu's man must be loyal to her. Huang Luqing. Demon Master, the one marrying shouldn't be him, but one of his souls. If one of his souls marrying a wife wasn't worthy of Ji Xinyue, then the Demon Master had a bunch of women by his side back then. Of course, Huang Luqing didn't say these out loud. What's the difference? In the end, it's still him. And he obviously can't forget his feelings for that woman, and he's still trying to find her. He treats Xinyu well because he treats her as that woman's substitute. Xie fiercely retorted. Huang Luqing didn't want to argue with him and sighed. Demon Master is right. Should we follow them? Follow. Of course. I want to see who Rongyue Tianlan's so-called wife is. We'll reach Fenghua City after passing through this forest. She's staying in the second room on the third floor of the Tian Kolai Inn in Fenghua City. Rongyue Tianlan instructed Yunxi, who was on the same cloud as him. Yunxi was playing with the bird. She nodded and replied, all right. Then, she tilted her head and looked at him. Aren't you going? Rongyue Tian said, let's use the soul-searching bird to identify it first. If Ji Tianyue was still Jiyu, he would naturally go down to meet her again. Of course, it wasn't to rekindle their old relationship, but to send her back to Southern Heaven Palace. Then, he would greet Southern Heaven Emperor and tell him not to mistreat her anymore. He would ensure that she would live a carefree life. If not, then Ji Tianyue was a stranger to him, and he didn't need to take any responsibility for her. He had already done all he could for her. Although she was Ji Xinyu's little sister, a little sister who always wanted to harm her elder sister. Ha! Let me go, woo-woo, let go of me. Help! Ah! The shrill cry of a woman came from the forest. When she shouted for the third time, something seemed to be stuck in her throat. She couldn't shout anymore and could only let out a whimper. Ha! This place is deserted. Little girl, you've made me happy enough. I can even let you go more comfortably. Chapter 30-24. Chaotic noises could be heard from below. It was obvious that there was a robbery and murder going on below. Rongyue Tianlan's expression changed, not good. She turned the cloud around and rushed downwards. In the depths of the forest, Ji Tianyue's clothes were torn and she was pressed down by a fierce-looking man. The man was pulling her underwear. Ji Tianyue's face was full of tears. She seemed to want to struggle desperately, but her acupoints were sealed and she could not move at all. She could only open her eyes wide and despair filled her eyes. There was a short man standing next to her. The short man was impatient. Third brother, let's get her things out quickly and leave. I feel a little creepy. The fierce-looking man laughed grimly. Big brother, we have to kill her to get the things she hid in the storage space. The short man frowned. After all, it's a human life. We can force her to take out everything. The fierce-looking man sneered. Big brother, don't you know the phrase, cut the weeds and dig up the roots? If we let her go now, she will report it to the authorities in the future. He laughed grimly again. Besides, I haven't touched such a delicate little beauty for a long time. How can I not play to my heart's content? Don't worry, no one will come here easily. We can do whatever we want. He tore off Ji Tianyue's underwear with a swish. The short man looked at Ji Tianyue, who was almost fully exposed, and greed appeared in his eyes. He finally made up his mind. Okay, third brother, when you're done, it's my turn. The fierce-looking man laughed as he untied his pants. Good, that's a brother. I know that you've been controlled by that bitch for a long time. When you and I are done playing, we'll take out her things. You can take some back and we'll divide the rest between us. We can still be free and unfettered. If you can't do it, you can go back and divorce that fierce bitch of yours. When we're rich, we can play with any woman we want in the future. Why should we do things according to that fierce bitch of yours? As he spoke, he had already pounced on Ji Tianyue, who was lying there. Little lady, I'm coming. He did not pounce on Ji Tianyue's body. Instead, his body was lifted up by a strong force and directly hit a big tree beside him. He did have some kung fu. At the critical moment, he desperately turned his body in the air. Originally, he was going to hit the tree with his head, but after turning his body, he hit the tree with his legs. He usually practiced martial arts with his legs. Even an iron pillar would be broken by his legs. He believed that if his legs collided with a tree, it would definitely be the tree that would fall. Crack. A sound that made one's teeth ache rang out, followed by a blood-curdling scream that tore through the air. He fell to the ground. He had no pants, and his legs were broken into 17 or 18 pieces, showing an extremely strange twist. His face was twisted in pain, and he was almost rolling on the ground. As for the short man, he didn't see his brother's miserable state. He flew out earlier than his brother, and was directly swept away by a huge force, crashing into a tree and dying. The ferocious-looking man forced his eyes open and saw a blue-robed man and a white-robed woman landing on the ground. This was the last thing he saw because another beam of blue light came and slammed him into the ground. The blue-robed man and the white-robed woman were naturally Rongyu Yishinlin and Yunxi. The scene in front of her was too unbearable. Rongyu Yishinlin directly slapped the bodies of the two filthy men into the ground and buried them. Chapter 30-25. Not only did Yunxi unseal Ji Tianyue's acupoints, but she also draped a white cloak over her to cover her embarrassment. Ji Tianyue was probably scared out of her wits. Her little face was pale, and her body was trembling non-stop. Yunxi finally saw her face clearly. Her fingers, which were draping the cloak over her, froze. Ji Tianyue's head was dizzy. At this moment, there was no one else in her sight except Rongyu Yishinlin, who was standing not far away. Her lips trembled for a long time before she called out, "Brother Rongyue." Tears streamed down her face. She pushed Yunxi away and wanted to throw herself into Rongyu Yishinlin's arms. Rongyu Yishinlin had not expected that she would be plotted against here. When he saw her throwing herself at him, he waved his sleeve. Ji Tianyue stood 10 feet away from him. She could not throw herself at him anymore. Ji Tianyue's face was pale as she looked at him. "Brother Rongyue." The veins on Rongyu Yishinlin's temples throbbed. "How did you end up like this?" Ji Tianyue burst into tears. "I didn't want to go back to the palace, so I wanted to look for you after I recovered. In the end, the lady boss said that it was not safe for a young lady like me, so she asked her man to send me." Who would have thought that when I walked here, his brothers would jump out? They wanted money and killed, and, what money? Did you expose the jewelry on your body? How did they find out? Ji Tianyue lowered her head. I took out the things in my storage space in front of the lady boss. Rongyu Yishanlin was speechless. He only had one word for this, pig. Ji Tianyue's face was pale as she continued, I clearly said that I would give them all the jewelry on my body, but they still. Brother Rongyue, fortunately you came in time. Otherwise, Tianyue's life would have been ruined. She cried like a begonia in the rain, but Rongyu Yishanlin had a headache. He did not comfort Ji Tianyue anymore. Instead, he looked directly at Yunxi. Yunxi understood and patted the soul-searching bird on her shoulder. The soul-searching bird chirped. It flew up, circled around Ji Tianyue, then flew back and landed on Yunxi's shoulder. Rongyu Yishanlin's heart tightened. He stared at Yunxi, his eyes full of questions. Yunxi and the bird talked for a while. The soul-searching bird shook its head like a rattle drum. Yunxi shook her head slightly at Rongyue Tianlan. She wasn't. She was not Ji. She was really not Ji. Rongyue Tian heaved a long sigh of relief. Rongyu Yishanlin left with Yunxi again. This time, he left without any worries. Leaving Ji Tianyue crying in the forest, out of humanitarianism, Rongyue Tianlan unsealed Ji Tianyue's acupoints before ascending. Yunxi also left a set of clothes for the little girl so that she could change into them later. Ji Tianyue watched them leave and cried uncontrollably. She finally understood that she and Rongyue Tianlan were not fated to be together. Why? Why won't you like me? How am I worse than my sister? Ji Tianyue's heart was filled with injustice and unwillingness. She clenched her small fists tightly. Obviously my dance is the best, and my appearance is better than hers. You are not as good as her in any aspect. You are not even fit to carry her shoes. A cold voice suddenly came from a big tree. Ji Tianyue was shocked. She raised her head abruptly and saw a man in a black robe standing on the treetop. The man's long hair hung down like a curtain, covering half of his face. He looked like a demon in the dark night. Chapter 30-26. Although half of his face was exposed, people couldn't see his face clearly. They could only feel that this man was extremely beautiful, and there was an indescribable charm in his coldness. This man had a strong pressure, and that invisible force made Ji Tianyue almost unable to raise her head. You. Who are you? She swore that this was the first time she saw this man, but she felt that he was a little familiar. That man's thin lips slightly hooked. You don't deserve to know who I am. His figure flashed, and like a bat, he flew down. Ji Tianyue suddenly seemed to recognize him, and took a few steps back. You are the one who kidnapped me into the ice crack. You want to use me to threaten him. He won't be fooled again. She was panicked and scared, and was already stuttering. The man in the black robe smiled. That's why I said you were useless. Useless people usually only have one ending. He slowly stretched out his palm towards her. That cold aura made Ji Tianyue's body feel like it was about to be frozen. Her martial arts had clearly recovered, but under that cold aura, her body was stiff, and she couldn't even retreat. The man in the black robe's palm was as white as jade, and his fingertips were round and slender, and it fell on her shoulder. Ji Tianyue also knew that it was a moment of life and death. She was so scared that her teeth were chattering, and she desperately said, Don't kill me. I can give you everything I have. The man in the black robe's eyes flashed slightly. Everything? Yes. Including my body. Please don't kill me. I can do everything for you. Ji Tianyue was almost scared to the point of peeing, making random wishes. Very good, then die for me. The man in the black robe's palm flashed with a black light. A moment later, the living Ji Tianyue disappeared, and only a skeleton was left in the white cloak, no longer fresh and delicate. Someone behind sighed faintly, why kill her? She's just a waste, you won't be able to increase your power by much by sucking her. The man in the black robe slowly withdrew his hand, as if he found it dirty, and then used a handkerchief to wipe his hand, and then threw the handkerchief away, and said indifferently, I've long found her unpleasant to the eye. For Ji Xinyu. Huang Luqing sighed. Humph. The black-robed man snorted, leaped up, and said to Huang Luqing, I'll chase after them, you clean up this place. He disappeared in the blink of an eye. Huang Luqing shook her head, looked at the skeleton on the ground, and sighed, you shouldn't have schemed against my sister after obtaining benefits from her. She is his bottom line. He casually dug a deep hole in the ground and threw the skeleton into it. The forest regained its tranquility. Even the soil on the ground didn't seem to have been stirred. However, the three of them had lost their lives in silence. Tianlan, that little girl really looks exactly like Ji Yu. I didn't expect that it wasn't. Yunxi couldn't help but sigh as she sat on the cloud. Rong Yuetian smiled and didn't say anything. He was relieved of a huge burden in his heart and felt very relaxed. Whether or not Ji Xinyu was Ji Yu was no longer important. It was fine as long as Ji Tianyue was not. He really could not accept that the woman he once loved would have such a personality. Fortunately, it wasn't. Do you think that little girl will be robbed again after being thrown into the forest? Yunxi was still a little worried. Rong Yuetian shook his head. It's hard to say, it depends on whether she has a memory or not. Chapter 30-27. Rong Yuishenlin shook his head. It's hard to say. It all depends on whether or not she has a good memory. If she keeps a low profile in the future, she shouldn't suffer too much in the world of martial arts. Her martial arts are actually quite good, it shouldn't be a problem for her to deal with ordinary martial artists. The reason she suffered a great loss this time was because the lady boss used some kind of bone-softening powder on her. She can't use most of her martial arts. I've already helped her neutralize the drug, so there shouldn't be any more problems. Yunxi nodded. I hope so. She looked up ahead. Where are we going now? Carefree Island. Rong Yuishenlin spat out 3 words. Yunxi's eyes widened. Isn't your Carefree Island on the Heavenly Bestowal continent? There's one here. Yunxi smiled. It seems that the second person you wanted me to check is there. What if she isn't you? Rong Yuishenlin's voice was light. Nothing. Whether or not she is Ji Yu, I will marry her. Yunxi. So you have a sweetheart here. Congratulations, congratulations. Then I should take a look at her and see just what sort of woman can catch the eye of our Sir Rong Yuishenlin. She's very outstanding. Rong Yuishenlin generously praised. His heart had already flown back to Carefree Island. 5 days had passed and she shouldn't have fully recovered. She was definitely still on his island. She must be angry that he had locked her up there. She might even fight him as soon as they met. Her angry appearance flashed through his mind and a warm current flowed through his heart. After not seeing her for just a few days, he already missed her. He didn't know if she missed him or not. Fortunately, they were about to meet again. He was lost in thought for a moment and no longer spoke. Yunxi sat on the clouds, hugging her knees and not speaking. She was also lost in thought. Of the carefree 3 immortals, 2 of them already had sweethearts. She was the only one left who was all alone, Xie and Huang Luqing didn't dare to get too close to the two people in front of them. Rongyu Yishanlin was too shrewd and cunning. His martial arts were also strong. As long as they weren't careful, they might be discovered by him. Once he noticed them, he would definitely lead them into a ditch. Therefore, they followed from a distance. Because they were far away, they couldn't hear what the two people in front of them were talking about. However, Xie was not interested in the conversation between the two of them. He only wanted to know Ji Xinyu's whereabouts and find her. The two of them were walking in silence when the sound transmission talisman on Huang Luqing's waist suddenly lit up. He raised his hand to pick it up. A moment later, he closed the voice transmission talisman and reported to Xie in a low voice, "Demon Master, they've all been arranged. Shall we go now?" Xie was stunned, and a complicated light flashed in his eyes. He shook his head slightly. "I'll find Rongyue Tianlan's lair first, then I'll go to them." It had not been easy for him to follow Rongyue Tianlan, and he did not want to fail at the last moment. Xie was stunned and said anxiously, "Devil Master, it's not easy to form that formation. I'm afraid that something unexpected will happen if we delay. Now that we know that Ji Xinyu is safe, she will come out sooner or later. At that time, it won't be difficult for Devil Master to meet her. However, once you miss this formation or something unexpected happens, it will be extremely difficult for Devil Master to recover all his martial arts. I'm afraid that he won't be able to recover even after 100 years of cultivation. Moreover, once the news of Devil Master's arrival is leaked, those immortal sects will definitely not let Devil Master off. At that time, not to mention capturing the beauty's heart, it will be difficult for Devil Master to survive." Chapter 30-28. He tried his best to analyze the pros and cons for Xie, so how could Xie not understand? But, he took a deep breath. "I'll go once I see where he's hiding." This was the biggest concession he could make. Huang Luqing. He knew that he couldn't persuade him anymore, so he could only use a voice transmission talisman to contact the other side and ask them to wait for another day. Rongyu Yishanlin predicted that she would recover all her martial arts in 8 days. In the end, Ji Xinyu gritted her teeth and trained crazily. She recovered in 4 days. The moment she recovered, she almost wanted to laugh 3 times. Sister has finally recovered. Finally, I don't have to stay here alone in the cold wind anymore. The moment she recovered her martial arts, she immediately picked up the moon god's sword and ran to the beach. Then, she tried the method Rongyu Yishanlin taught her. Sure enough, she easily opened the barrier, and a whirlpool appeared in front of her. She was overjoyed. Just as she was about to jump into the whirlpool, she turned around to look. In fact, the environment here was quite beautiful. Now that she was about to leave, she actually felt a little nostalgic. However, she was still in a hurry to get out. Rongyu Yishanlin's island was very good, but it was really boring to be alone here. When she wasn't cultivating, there wasn't even anyone to talk to. No matter how beautiful the scenery was, it would be boring if no one enjoyed it. Moreover, she was still thinking about her senior and junior brothers in the Ziyun sect. In the end, she jumped into the whirlpool without looking back. She would come here again if she had the chance in the future. Right now, it was more important to get down to business. She left the island smoothly. When her feet landed on the shore, she looked back at the surging waves of the sea and laughed loudly. She was out. She was finally out. She looked at herself. Her peach-red shirt was like a brilliant red cloud. The first thing she did when she left the island was to look for her voice transmission talisman. Very good, Rongyu Yishanlin didn't lie to her. She really found her things in the location he said. A few voice transmission talismans lay in her palm. They were colorful and exceptionally beautiful. Different colors represented different people to contact. White represented her master, yellow represented the South Heaven Emperor, and the other colors represented her senior and junior brothers and the friends she made when she was traveling in the Jianghu. For example, the blue one that looked like a star represented Rongyu Yishinlin. The voice transmission talisman was formed by combining the telekinesis of both parties. Therefore, those who could communicate with each other through the voice transmission talisman were usually the most trustworthy and closest people. Ji Xinyue looked at the sound transmission talisman in her hand, and discovered that there was an additional blood-red one. Furthermore, the appearance of this voice transmission talisman was different from other voice transmission talismans. The other voice transmission talismans were all in the shape of a 5-pointed star, but this one was in the shape of an octagon. It lay in her palm like a red bean. She moved closer to her nose and sniffed. Her heart skipped a beat. Rongyue Tianlan's aura. Obviously, Rongyue Tianlan had left this for her. He had already left her a blue one. What did he mean by giving her this blood-red one? Perhaps he had mistakenly mixed in the sound-transmitting talisman that he used to communicate with others. In that case, she would just return it to him when she saw him in the future. She put away the voice transmission talisman and took out the talisman that represented her eldest senior brother. She cast a spell and connected the call. Eldest senior brother seemed to be a little busy. The voice transmitting talisman flashed for a full 5 minutes before he picked it up. Ji Xinyue first asked about the situation over there. Eldest senior brother replied casually, "Very good, it has always been very good." Ji Xinyue listened attentively. She felt that it was a little noisy over there, as if there were a lot of people. She couldn't help but ask. Chapter 30-29. Eldest senior brother laughed. "Yes, I'm teaching your martial nephews. You know, these little disciples have always been lively. All right, Xinyu, I still have to teach them. I'll talk to you later." The sound transmission talisman hung up. Ji Xinyu did not suspect anything. Although her eldest senior brother was cold on the outside, he was not cold-hearted. He had taken in many disciples, and all of them were good talents. When he was free, he would often personally teach them martial arts. Since the sect was fine, Ji Xinyu was temporarily relieved. She took out a purple sound transmission talisman and weighed it in her palm. This sound transmission talisman was connected to Xia Fenglu. Should she contact him? See where he was. So many days had passed. Had he become another person? What devil master? Her fingers clenched slightly. Until now, she still could not believe that her lively and cheerful little junior brother was the incarnation of that great devil. She closed her eyes and threw the sound transmission talisman into her storage space. It could be said that she was running away, or that she could not bear to, but she did not want to contact this little junior brother for the time being. She thought for a moment, then contacted eldest senior brother again and asked about Xia Fenglio's situation. Eldest senior brother's tone was very calm. He said that Xia Fenglu had indeed gone back and even presented a moonlight pearl to Master, which Master liked very much. Ji Xinyu's heart sank. She said jokingly, "I went with him to get this pearl. He didn't mention me." She did not want to take any credit. It was just that when Xia Fenglu went to get this pearl, she was lying in the ice shell, her life and death unknown. If Xia Fenglu did not become a devil, the first thing he should have done when he returned to the Purple Cloud sect was to tell Master, and then ask Master to save her. That was the right thing to do. Eldest senior brother thought for a while and said, "That's right." Ninth brother said that after you took the bead with him, you went to another place to do something. We know that little junior sister has always liked to wander the Jianghu and has a lot of things to do, so we did not ask again. Ninth junior brother did not mention it again either. Ji Xinyu paused for a moment, then smiled. I see. Then have you heard any news about old Ninth recently? Eldest senior brother asked. What news? Ji Xinyue paused again. After all, she wasn't 100% sure yet, so she couldn't say it out loud. After thinking for a while, he said, I'll tell you about this matter in detail when I get back. In short, you have to guard against him and the people around him. Eldest senior brother wanted to ask more, but Ji Xinyu had already hung up. She decided to talk to them in detail when she returned. After all, it wasn't that convenient to talk about it through a sound transmission talisman. In the end, she finally took out the blue voice transmission talisman, and her lips curled into a smug smile. Rongyu Tianlan thought that she would only come out on the 8th day, but she came out 3 days earlier. Would he be surprised if she contacted him now? Would he find her amazing? Just as he was about to open the voice transmission talisman, he paused. She contacted him as soon as she came out, as if she couldn't wait to see him. He must be very proud. She raised her hand and threw the blue voice transmission talisman into her storage space. She felt that Rongyu Tianlan would probably go back on the 8th day. Once he returned to the island and found that she was not there, he would naturally guess that she had gone out. At that time, his expression would definitely be very good. Ji Xinyue seemed to be able to see Rongyu Tianlan's flustered and exasperated expression in front of her eyes. Her eyelashes curved as she smiled smugly. Chapter 30. After she came out, she first checked her body. Her inner breath was flowing vigorously, and her body was as light as the wind. Her telekinesis had indeed fully recovered, and even strengthened a little. She waved her hand and summoned the Shura saber, and practiced a round of saber techniques in the small forest. Very good, although she had been sitting on the island for 5 days, her saber techniques did not fall behind at all. When she started to wield it, it was so vigorous. She had to admit that Rongyu Tianlan's small treehouse was really a good place for healing. She had been injured so many times, but this time she recovered the fastest and the best. Even the scars on her body were not obvious. If one did not look carefully, they would not be seen at all. Not only was her face beautiful now, but her body was also becoming beautiful. Originally, she only wanted to keep her face from being too injured so that she would not scare people when she went out, but now she could not help but pay attention to her body. After she finished practicing her saber techniques, she ran to a small lake not far away to look at her reflection. The lake water was like a mirror, reflecting the girl in it. Her cheeks were slightly red, and her eyes were smiling, like a budding peach blossom. She turned her head and asked the moon god's sword beside her, "How was the saber technique I used just now?" The moon god's sword gave her a very pertinent comment, overflowing with spring. Ji Xinyue was speechless. She slapped the moon god's sword away, and the aura of a tomboy reappeared in the martial arts world. Get lost, what nonsense. The moon god's sword felt wronged. You look like a girl in love now. Ji Xinyue's hand shook, and the sword was slapped even further away. A girl in love. She was now an old girl. She had truly become an adult at 1,000 years old. Her 2 sisters had married at 1,000 years old, and she was the only one who was still unmarried at 3,000 years old. In Ji Xinyue's heart, only girls around 1,000 years old who were about to reach adulthood would be young girls in love. For someone like her, even if she was in love, she would be a girl in love. She had nothing to do with the word young. When did she agree with this in love? The moon god's sword looked at her cheeks that were getting redder and redder. Are you shy? Shy your head. Ji Xinyue picked up the 8 trigram sword, and with a shake of her hand, she threw it straight into the lake. Before the sword entered the water, it passed her a message: your thoughts were exposed, and you became angry out of humiliation. Ji Xinyue. Could she give the 8 trigram sword away? The island that Rongyu Tianlan was on was quite far from the Purple Cloud sect, about 2,000 to 3,000 miles away. Ji Xinyu had to fly for a day before she could get back. Of course, if she used the ability to travel 1,000 miles in an instant, she would be able to arrive within 2 hours. However, that would consume too much psyche power. There might be a tough battle waiting for her, so there was no need to waste her precious psyche power on rushing. During the journey, she even stayed in a hotel once. The journey was carefree. When she arrived at the Purple Cloud sect, it was already the evening of the next day. It was also at this time that Rongyu Ishanlan brought Yunxi back to Carefree Island. As soon as Ji Xinyu arrived at the Purple Cloud sect, she noticed that the atmosphere was not quite right. The atmosphere in the Ziyun sect was a little tense. Her fellow disciples, except for Xie Fenglu, had all rushed back. Moreover, all of them had rushed back with their elite disciples. Not only that, but there were also some outsiders in the Purple Cloud sect. Each of these outsiders was an outstanding talent of the Sanskrit continent, and they all had one or more unique skills. Experts usually had a bit of arrogance, and more or less had the bad habit of being arrogant because of their abilities. These outsiders were no exception. The little martial nephews who lived in the Purple Cloud sect and ordered Ji Xinyu around were quite comfortable. Chapter 30-31. When Ji Xinyu arrived, she saw these people practicing a kind of array in the big square of the Purple Cloud sect. Ji Xinyu was very knowledgeable about arrays, but she had never seen anything like this. The disciples and the experts were wearing different colored robes, forming a 6-pointed star array. They were moving around in groups, with all kinds of lights flashing from time to time. The Purple Cloud sect master didn't take in disciples easily. He had very high requirements for the aptitude of his disciples, so his disciples were all elites of the elites. Any one of them was a big shot in the Fanine continent. Moreover, he had a problem with taking in disciples according to the 6 attributes. Perhaps it was because people had lived for too long that they became a little bored, so other than Feng Wuji, the Purple Cloud sect master's eldest disciple, the other disciples were all of a single attribute. For example, the second senior brother was of the metal attribute, the third senior brother was of the wood attribute, and the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh senior brothers were of the water, fire, earth, and thunder attributes respectively. Usually, after taking in disciples of one attribute, he wouldn't take in disciples of the same attribute, no matter how good the aptitude of the person who wanted to be his disciple was. The Purple Cloud sect master was of a full attribute, so he taught these disciples different attributes of martial arts. According to him, this was called specialization, and it was easy to become a talent. The Purple Cloud sect master's method of taking in disciples was quite good. Ji Xinyu and the other senior brothers of a single attribute all cultivated their attributes to perfection. In terms of the strength of a single attribute, no cultivator in the Fanine continent could surpass them. However, there were still drawbacks to cultivating a single attribute martial arts, because the battlefield was ever-changing, and you didn't know what kind of enemy you would encounter. If the enemy you met could be countered, then you would naturally win a big victory. If the enemy countered you, then you could only passively take a beating. If the enemy's attribute was related to your attribute, then it would be even more tragic. Even if the enemy was a second-rate character, with a move from you, he could still be a first-rate character. For example, if the second senior brother of the metal attribute met an enemy of the water attribute, even if the enemy's martial arts were far inferior to the second senior brother, the second senior brother would definitely not be a match for him. Moreover, there weren't many people who cultivated a single attribute on this continent. Most of them had more than 2 attribute skills. Once someone saw your attribute and used the corresponding attribute to fight, you would only be beaten up. Therefore, it was still very risky to practice this kind of kung fu with only one attribute. Because these disciples of a single attribute had all made a vow to sect Master Ziyun before they entered the sect, that they would only accept disciples of the same attribute as their disciples in the future. Therefore, the disciples of these senior brothers were all disciples of a single attribute. At this moment, they were wearing robes that corresponded to their attributes and were circling around in the formation according to their own rules. It was quite a beautiful sight to behold from the air. It was rare for the outer sect experts to cultivate a single attribute. Although their robes were the same color as the disciples, there were a few shining silver lines on the sleeves of their robes, indicating their noble status. To be honest, when Ji Xinyue saw the people running in formation, she was a little confused. She didn't understand what was going on. Could it be that Master, who always liked to hunt for novelties, had come up with a new trick to relieve his boredom? But wasn't it a little too grand to let so many people participate? Ji Xinyu looked around again. Then she found that at the various passes of the Purple Cloud sect, there were disciples of different attributes guarding them. They all looked serious, as if they were facing a great enemy. Chapter 30-32. Something had indeed happened in the sect. Ji Xinyu thought for a moment, but did not go to find her master and eldest senior brother. Instead, she landed in front of a disciple. This disciple was Feng Wuji's disciple. He was usually smart and quick-witted. No matter what happened in the sect, he would be the first to know. Therefore, Ji Xinyue could easily find out what had happened in Ziyun sect from him. The Beast Valley was bathed in blood by an unknown force. The animals inside were sucked dry and turned into skeletons. Even the two disciples who were guarding the Beast Valley had disappeared. Everyone suspected that they had been killed by the blood-sucking monster. The blood-sucking monster might have already escaped from the valley. The sect master of the Purple Cloud sect and the eldest disciple left behind to guard the sect had already turned the sect upside down, but they could not find any trace of the blood-sucking monster. However, the disciples of the Purple Cloud sect were disappearing one after another, causing everyone to be in a state of panic. Only then did their master call all the disciples back. The disciples then followed their master's instructions and asked for help. As for the formation outside, it was said to be an ancient demon-slaying formation that could kill all evil spirits. Once this formation was officially activated, the blood-sucking monster would have nowhere to hide and would automatically appear in the formation. In the end, it would be destroyed by the immortal chi of the formation. There was actually a demon-slaying formation with such a function. She had never heard her master mention it before. She then looked at the formation that was being rehearsed. Indeed, there were all kinds of immortal chi, especially the center of the formation, where all kinds of immortal chi gathered. There was a six-colored light in that place. It was very beautiful. The disciples and experts below had been rehearsing. Their techniques were becoming more and more skillful, and their power was increasing. For some reason, Ji Xinyue felt that there was something strange about this formation. However, she could not pinpoint what was strange about it. She looked at the formation in a daze for a moment. Just as she was about to go find her master and eldest senior brother, the two of them appeared from the east. Eldest senior brother raised a flag and waved it. This was a signal to end the rehearsal. Only then did the disciples disperse under the leadership of their respective masters. They all came forward to pay their respects to sect master Ziyun and Feng Wuji. The external help that they invited naturally heaved a sigh of relief. Although they were of noble status, they were still sect master Ziyun's juniors. They also came forward to exchange a few pleasantries. Sect Master Ziyun said a few comforting words and asked everyone to take a rest and recover their energy. The official opening time of the array would only be announced after he had carefully calculated it. However, it would not be later than tomorrow morning at the latest. Everyone was indeed a little tired, but they were all very excited. They were filled with curiosity and hostility towards the blood-sucking monsters that would appear after the array was activated. Especially the friends of the missing disciples, they couldn't help but feel their blood boiling. They couldn't wait to activate the array so that they could kill the blood-sucking monsters and avenge their friends. After everyone left, the foreign aide was also invited to the guest room by Feng Wuji to rest. The huge martial arts field regained its calm. The martial arts field of the Purple Clouds sect was very expensive. It was paved with 6 colored jade stones. The jade here was very rare in the entire Fanine continent, and any piece could be sold for a high price. However, there was a martial arts field here that could accommodate thousands of people. Its value was immeasurable. Initially, every time Ji Xinyu came to this training field, she felt that her master really knew how to burn money and was willing to spend it all. She had once asked her master the reason, and her master had thought about it. Chapter 30-33. She had once asked her master the reason. Her master thought for a moment, then patted her head and asked, "Don't you think that this kind of jade in the martial arts field shows our Purple Cloud sect's magnanimity?" Ji Xinyu was speechless. Magnanimity. Indeed, magnanimity. Those who came to the Purple Clouds sect because of its reputation were all amazed by this martial arts field, feeling that it was very spectacular and shocking. They were all racking their brains to join the Purple Clouds sect. Thus, the Purple Clouds sect never lacked good disciples to join. Every time they recruited new disciples, the sect would be as crowded as a marketplace, and this made the Purple Clouds sect more and more prosperous. Ji Xinyu had always felt that this jade martial arts field was the facade of the Purple Clouds sect, although she had always wondered why her master didn't use these jade stones to build the main gate of the Purple Clouds sect. Wouldn't that make it look more imposing and show off in front of more people? However, she still understood her master, because her master had always been an unpredictable person. Even his beloved disciple, Ji Xinyu, couldn't figure him out. No matter what shocking things he did, Ji Xinyu wouldn't find it too strange, and she was already used to it. At this moment, the Purple Cloud sect's master was standing in the large square, looking up at the setting sun in the sky, as if he was lost in thought. Ji Xinyu rarely saw her master with such an expression, as if there was something very heavy on his mind that he couldn't resolve. Was her master sad for those innocent disciples who died in vain? Or was he worried about tomorrow's battle? Ji Xinyu's blood surged as she appeared in front of her master. "Master, Xinyu is back. I'm willing to share your worries." The Purple Cloud sect's master seemed to be startled and took a step back. Looking at his little disciple who was obviously travel-worn but had bright eyes, he rubbed his forehead. "Impudent, suddenly jumping out like this, do you want to see your master's shocked expression?" With his usual reprimanding tone, his eyes were filled with genuine concern. He looked at her. "Oh, you look a bit thin. Who made you unhappy?" Ji Xinyu's heart warmed. In this world, only her master cared about her so much, even more than her father. The fatherly love she lacked from her father seemed to have been compensated by the Purple Cloud sect's master. In her heart, she had always treated the Purple Cloud sect's master as her father. The Purple Cloud sect's master patted her shoulder and looked into her eyes. "Why do you look like you're about to cry? Were you really bullied?" Ji Xinyu shook her head. She tried to hold it in, but she couldn't hold it in any longer and finally opened her mouth. "Master, I've heard about the sect's matters from the disciples below. This disciple suspects that." He paused here. "What are you suspecting?" Sect Master Ziyun pulled her to a high platform and sat down. Ji Xinyu thought for a moment, then steeled her heart and said, "Disciple suspects that it's Little Nine. Little Nine is playing tricks." Grand Master Ziyun had just conjured 2 cups of tea and was about to pass one to her when he heard her words. His fingers paused and the tea spilled a little. "Are you suspecting your own junior brother?" Ji Xinyue sat there hugging her knees. She was in a very conflicted mood, but she still said word by word, "Master, disciple is as close to him as a brother. I really don't want to doubt him, but I am more than 50% sure." Actually, she still said too little. She was 90% sure now. Sect Master Ziyun was silent for a moment and sighed, "Little 8, tell me your reason." Because of the importance of this matter, Ji Xinyue did not want to hide anything from her master, so she told her master about what had happened to her and Xia Fenglu in the celestial crystal ocean. Chapter 30-34. Of course, she also briefly mentioned how Rongyue Tianlan had saved her. However, she did not mention the exact location of Rongyue Tianlan's island. She only said that she had been cultivating in the place where he lived in seclusion for the past few days. Sect Master Ziyun did not speak for a long time. After a moment, he said, "Xinyue, you said that little Jiu was controlled by Huang Qinglu in the sea, and that was why he stabbed you?" Ji Xinyue nodded. "It should be. He was obviously being controlled at that time. Huang Qinglu also called him Xiejuk." Sect Master Ziyun sighed and said, "There was indeed a devil master called Xiejuk 30,000 years ago. However, he was besieged by a group of immortals and his soul had completely dissipated. Logically speaking, it is impossible for him to come back to life. Perhaps Huang Qinglu only called out that name to make you lose your mind, so that the controlled little Jiu could successfully sneak attack you." Ji Xinyue nodded. "Disciple also thought so that day, so I am not sure. However, since he has already returned and met Master, why didn't he mention this matter and ask Master to save me?" Sect Master Ziyun shook his head slightly. "I can't guess this at the moment. Perhaps little Jiu has another way to save you. After all, the ice cover that Huang Qinglu sealed you. Actually, Master can't break it. It can only be solved by the person who tied the bell. In other words, only Huang Qinglu can break it. Rongyue Tianlan is an anomaly and cannot be counted." Ji Xinyue. What Master said seemed to make sense. In fact, she also did not want Xia Fenglu to be Xiejuk. She subconsciously rejected this inference. Presumably, Master was the same, so when he heard this news, his first reaction was to refute it. However, after combining all the information, Ji Xinyue vaguely felt that Xia Fenglu was Xiejuk's incarnation. After all, many things could not be explained by coincidence. For example, on the night Xia Fenglu and Huang Luqing returned, the matter of the blood-sucking monster happened in the Purple Clouds sect. "Master, have you been in contact with little Jiu these days?" Sect Master Ziyun nodded. "I have been in contact. There is nothing unusual." "Then he's still with Huang Qinglu." Sect Master Ziyun's handsome face was dignified. "Master didn't ask, but since Huang Qinglu controlled him to attack you, and Little Nine hasn't revealed a word to the sect until now, there are only two possibilities. First, he is still not sure whether others can break the cover, so he pretended to deal with Huang Qinglu to avoid alerting the enemy. Secondly, he is that demon master Xiejuk, and he is currently busy trying to restore his original body. However, I feel that the possibility of the second possibility is not too high. You also know Little Nine's temperament. After all, she is mischievous and lively. As for Xiejuk, I heard that this person's temper is cold and irritable, and he's bloodthirsty. It's almost the complete opposite of Little Jiu's personality. It's really not similar. No matter what, this matter is of great importance. I will thoroughly investigate this matter and give you an explanation." Ji Xinyue said, "Master, there's no need to explain anything to Disciple. Disciple's suffering a loss is a small matter, but Demon Master Xiejuk's revival is a big matter. Once he succeeds in reviving, I'm afraid he will bring a storm of blood to this continent. Disciple also hopes that little Jiu is not Xie, and that everything is Huang Qingliu's doing. Sect Master Ziyun casually handed her a cup of tea. Perhaps this Huang Qingliu is not simple. I will investigate this matter carefully. Xinyu, this matter is no small matter. Before there is a clear conclusion, do not leak any information to anyone. Chapter 30-35. Her master's request was not excessive. After all, it involved Xie Fenglu. He was Sect Master Ziyun's beloved disciple and Ji Xinyue's favorite junior brother. If news of this spread in advance, it would definitely set off a huge wave in the entire Fanning continent. Xie Fenglu would be hunted down by all the immortals in the Fanning continent. If it was proven that Xie Fenglu was wronged and that he was not Xie, then it would be too unfair to him. No one would spread the news just because they suspected that their family had committed a crime. Therefore, Sect Master Ziyun's request was very reasonable, and Ji Xinyue would do the same. If she wasn't facing her most trusted master this time, she wouldn't have said it. She nodded and naturally agreed. Sect Master Ziyun patted her shoulder. No matter what, there will be a result tomorrow. You are all so tired, go back and rest well. Only when you have recovered your spirit can you share my worries. Sect Master Ziyun turned and left. The sun was already halfway down, and his back had an inexplicable sense of desolation. Ji Xinyue held the half-drunk cup of tea and sat there for a while before standing up. As soon as she stood up, her body swayed slightly. Then, she slowly fell down. A figure flashed from the darkness and caught her as she was about to fall to the ground. He lifted her up and looked down at her, a complicated look in his eyes. Xinyu, you're too tired. You should rest well. Master has no other choice. No matter what, Master will not harm you. I will ensure your safety and not let you suffer any real harm. Go to sleep. When you wake up, you will find that this world is still the same as before. Nothing has changed. Ji Xinyue laid in his arms, her long eyelashes slightly closed. She had completely fallen asleep. It was already late at night, and a few stars fell from the sky. There was only one entrance to the Beast Valley. The other places were all cliffs and were sealed by layers of barriers, so there was no way to enter or exit. At the entrance of the Beast Valley was a shiny golden mirror. The mirror had complicated spell patterns on it, and layers of light flashed on the surface of the mirror. This mirror was the famous demon revealing mirror in the Fanning continent. Once a demonic creature entered or exited the valley, this mirror would alarm and emit thousands of rays of golden light, more beautiful than fireworks. Because of this mirror, people didn't have to worry about any monsters sneaking in and out of the valley. This demon-revealing mirror was Sect Master Ziyun's most prized possession. Over the years that he had been in possession of this mirror, countless devils who had disguised themselves as ordinary people had been exposed and killed by the immortals. When the mirror was mentioned, the immortals of the Fanning continent all praised it. However, the people of the Devil Dao hated and feared the mirror. They did everything they could to destroy it. Over the years, there were a few devils who risked their lives to steal the mirror and destroy it, but they all died before they could succeed. They were all killed by the Sect Master Ziyun, who was jealous of the devils and had powerful magic power. After a while, no one dared to have any ideas about the mirror anymore. Tonight, it was Ji Xinyu's third senior brother's turn to guard the mirror. This third senior brother had always been cautious and conscientious in his work. As long as it was a task given to him, he would definitely complete it with quality and quantity. He would never go off on his own to fool others. Just like now, on the eve of the great battle, all the participants had already rested. Both the inside and outside of the valley were quiet. Only the occasional long howl of the beasts in the Beast Valley made the night seem even quieter and deeper. Third senior brother sat on a blue stone at the entrance of the valley. Although he was very tired, he was still full of energy. Chapter 30-36. The 4 disciples he was most proud of were by his side. The few of them had been chatting to get rid of their sleepiness, and naturally, they talked about the blood-sucking monster. They were all guessing what the blood-sucking monster looked like. The young disciples' imagination was abnormally rich. They imagined the blood-sucking monster to have all kinds of ferocious appearances, such as 3 heads and 6 arms, a head like a basket, and fangs that were a few feet long. A gust of wind suddenly blew from afar, brushing past them and blowing straight into the Beast Valley. The night wind was rather cold, and these disciples were in the middle of discussing terrifying things. When the wind blew, they shivered. A disciple crossed his arms and looked at the entrance of the valley. Why did I feel like something flew past just now? When he said this, everyone felt goosebumps appear on their skin. No way. No way. I didn't see anything. Could it be that the other party used an invisibility technique? Third senior brother was a little absent-minded just now. When he heard the disciples' words, he first looked at the demon-revealing mirror. There was nothing unusual on it. He waved his hand. Don't make wild guesses. What kind of person is there? It's impossible for people from the celestial world to enter this valley with invisibility. If a demon wants to enter or leave, regardless of whether he's invisible or not, this mirror will warn him. What just blew past was just a gust of wind. The disciples heaved a sigh of relief and stopped talking about the previous topic. Instead, they started to gossip about men. Third senior brother was a little absent-minded as he looked at the demon-revealing mirror. When that gust of wind blew past, there was a faint fragrance. It seemed to be the fragrance on little junior sister's body, but it shouldn't be little junior sister, right? Didn't she already rest? He knew from the other disciples that little junior sister had returned, and he excitedly ran to her courtyard to visit her. However, he met his master at the entrance of the courtyard. Sect Master Ziyun told him that Ji Xinhua was tired from the journey and had suffered some injuries. She was resting now and asked him not to disturb her. If there was anything else, he should wait until tomorrow. Since his master said so, he could only return. Did he miss little junior sister too much? So when a gust of wind blew past, he could smell little junior sister's scent. He sighed and continued to sit there and guard. However, knowing that little junior sister had returned, he was even more confident in winning tomorrow's battle. Who was little junior sister? Her avatar was Xinyu, one of the top 3 experts in the Fanine continent. She was a classic example of the student surpassing the master. Her martial arts were even slightly stronger than the sect head of Ziyun. With her back, what demons and ghosts couldn't be exterminated? The Beast Valley was filled with mountains and dense forests. A black shadow shuttled back and forth in the valley as if it was looking for something. Suddenly, the black shadow stopped at a mountain ridge. In the night, her eyes were as deep as the stars. This person was Ji Xinyu. She had never thought that her master, whom she had always trusted and loved her like a father, would plot against her. Therefore, when she was chatting with her master, she did drink the tea that her master had spiked. It was only when she stood up and felt dizzy that she realized that something was wrong. Fortunately, when he was with Romeu at Tianlan, he had taught her the kung fu to cure the knockout drug. Therefore, she immediately activated that kung fu at the moment when she was about to faint. Once this kung fu was activated, it would not stop even if the person was unconscious. Sect Master Ziyun's knockout drug was supposed to make her sleep for a day and a night, but she only slept for 4 hours before waking up. Chapter 30-37. When she woke up, she was a little confused, but she reacted quickly. She was stunned for a moment and didn't know what to feel. She first sensed her body. Her inner breath was normal, and all her physiological functions were normal. She even felt that the blood in her body was more active. In other words, the drug that her master gave her only had the effect of making her unconscious. It wouldn't cause any harm to her body, and even had the effect of nourishing her blood. Before she fainted, she vaguely heard her master's words. She didn't hear the whole thing, but she still heard the sentence, "I won't let you suffer any harm." It seemed that he really didn't want to harm her, but why did he drug her for no reason? Did he not want her to think too much and nourish her spirit? Or was her master hiding something important from her? Or was her master from the demonic sect? When the last thought popped up, she immediately pushed it back down. How could it be? Her master hated the demonic sect the most. He would kill everyone he saw. Who knew how many demons had died in his hands over the years? How could he be from the demonic sect? Anyone could be from the demonic sect, but her master couldn't be. She must be crazy to think of this possibility, but her master's original attitude towards the demonic disciples was that he would rather kill 1,000 by mistake than let one go. But now, Xiaojiu was obviously a big suspect, yet her master could calmly analyze and deal with it. Was it because Xiaojiu was his beloved disciple? He didn't believe that his disciple was a demon, so he could calm down and investigate thoroughly. The more Ji Xinyu thought about it, the more her head hurt. She subconsciously didn't want to suspect her master. Maybe her master did have other secrets. And he didn't want her to worry about these secrets, so, although she kept comforting herself, she was still a little nervous. She felt that something big was about to happen, but she couldn't find any clues. She thought of Rongyue Tianlan and her heart moved. He was the only one who knew part of the inside story, and he had always been meticulous. Maybe she should discuss it with him. She was the kind of person who would do what she thought. She immediately took out her voice transmission talisman, but when she took it out, she was stunned. Her other voice transmission talismans were all there, but the blue one that contacted Rongyue Tianlan was missing. She didn't give up and looked through the storage space again. She even searched every nook and cranny, but she still couldn't find the voice transmission talisman. Could it be that he had accidentally lost the voice transmission talisman when he took it out to check last time? That's impossible, right? She clearly remembered that she had personally put the voice transmission talisman into her storage space. As for the things that were placed in the storage space, unless someone with a stronger psychokinesis came to retrieve them, it was impossible for them to lose it. She searched her room again and even searched every nook and cranny of her bed, but there was no sign of the voice transmission talisman. She finally gave up. It seemed like she had lost it. Her gaze landed on the blood-red sound-transmitting talisman. This belonged to Rongyue Tian. Could she use it to contact him? She immediately tried to activate the red sound-transmitting talisman, but after a while, the red sound-transmitting talisman didn't budge at all. It was obvious that this was a special kind of sound-transmitting talisman, which couldn't be activated by ordinary means. If it wasn't her own voice transmission talisman, it would be super troublesome to use. She would need to decipher some things. She was afraid that she wouldn't be able to decipher it without 6 to 10 hours. Moreover, she didn't know who was connected to the other side. Perhaps it was one of Rongyue Tianlan's friends. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.